3, 2, 1.
And welcome to the Freeborn Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Jackson, and I'm here today with my best friend, Terri Jackson. And we're very happy to have her with us today.
Yeah.
I had to persuade her to come on. She never wants to come on with me, so now I'm glad she's finally agreed to come on. So I have a whole bunch of questions for her. We're gonna put her on the hot seat.
Oh, really?
Yes, I do have a whole bunch of
Okay.
things people want to know. People want to know.
People.
Like, is there any way I could be more perfect? People want to know this.
Oh my God. I can't answering that.
You can't answer. What are you on here for then?
You could not be more perfect.
See?
You could not. It's impossible.
Is there any way you could deserve me more?
No.
People want to know that.
You're so stupid. Oh no. It's taken a lot of training to get you where you are.
Oh.
I've had to mold you and shape you.
Oh, you did, huh?
Yes.
Anna says that we should call the show the Beauty and the Beast show.
Okay, that sounds good to me.
I told her not to be calling you
I
Beast.
know what you're going to say. Yes, she just handed that to you on a platter.
All righty. No, seriously. So you have to answer this. This one you have to answer.
Okay.
All right. So if there's one thing you could change about me for life, so you can only change one thing my whole life.
For life?
Yeah, you only get to change one thing.
Starting now?
You can't think of anything, huh?
Oh, no.
I can definitely think of a few if you're asking
but it has
me.
to be good.
I know I can think of something.
It has to be good. Okay. Well, it probably won't be what most people think. I would think most people would think I would change how controversial maybe you can be. And yet, I have a love-hate relationship with that part of your personality. But I mainly have a love for it because I appreciate that part of you so much. Because life is not boring with Mike Jackson. However, if I could change something, this is where it gets boring. So he doesn't like going on vacation. He likes staying home. His idea of vacation is being in his office or reading, right? That's what you love to do.
Yes.
So if I could put a little more adventure in your blood, I'd probably do that, where you were more travel, you appreciated maybe, different sites and different parts of the world. Let's go camping. Although you say I would never do it, maybe you're right.
Yeah, let's go camping.
But those words, if they'd come out of your mouth, I would be so happy. Yeah, let's go camping.
Until we got
Which
there.
cabin?
Yeah.
Right?
Which luxury resort are we going camping
would be
in?
awesome. Let's do that. No, yeah, you don't like doing those things, and that's frustrating because you say plan and I'll go, but I want you to be really excited about going. So that's frustrating.
All right.
I don't know, but you could never change that. I don't think you would ever change that.
I don't think so. I don't see it happening. I don't see it on the horizon.
Yeah. But if I could change that about you, I think we would see the world. I would love to see the world.
But now you can see the world on the internet.
No,
I don't understand why you need to go anywhere.
That's the argument we have every year.
It's like, that's why God invented the internet.
Your idea of vacation is maybe doing your Bible school or something like that.
Well, now that's a nice vacation.
No.
I take you on that vacation every year, and we
I
can't.
know, and I have to give up the only time you have
Turn her
off.
down a little bit. You're a little loud.
I'm a little loud, sorry.
A little bit. There you go. No, it's not you.
Okay.
It's over there. No, just her up on top, yeah. We didn't do a sound check before we started because, as always, you're ready at the last possible minute, squeaking in under the wire.
Is that the one thing you would change about me?
Yeah, your procrastination. You're always procrastinating. Like, you were up since 6, I think. What were you
pretty
doing?
early. I like to get my coffee and I like to chill.
For 2 hours?
Look out the window. And
for 2.5
fluff
hours?
the pillows on the couch and do things like that.
How many things did you rearrange on the walls for 2.5 hours?
I didn't do that.
You didn't do that
No.
today.
No, but I do like change the scenery in my house about every 3 months.
So I don't understand why you need to go anywhere then. Turn her down a little bit. She's still a little loud.
Okay.
So all you want to talk about and think about for 2 weeks is coronavirus.
Yeah, longer than that probably since it started.
Since it started.
Mm-hmm.
So when it first started, and I know you don't want me to say this.
Go ahead. I know you're
I have
dying
to say
to.
it. I have to say it. So when it first started, I told you that this whole lockdown business was silly, that it didn't matter how many people died because people die all the time, and it's very likely that many, even millions of people could die from this. I never underplayed that.
Mm-hmm.
But that it didn't matter because if you lock down the economy, many more people are going to die from that.
Mm-hmm.
The locking down the economy is more deadly than I should say, that's not what I mean. It's not more deadly. Locking down the economy kills people just because you do it, with or without a virus. And so we had to find some way to not lock down the economy by fiat and then try to protect ourselves from whatever happens in life, including this virus.
Yeah.
And you didn't like me saying that.
No, not in the beginning.
Why not?
Because I was willing to give the experts and the government officials the benefit of the doubt, and because the models look so dire, and they say that the 2 weeks wasn't going to, when it is a mandated government shutdown, it's very different from an actual collapse. So the economic recovery would be a little easier to get back rolling again. The stock markets, everything will go up again after the 2 weeks. It'll all be hunky-dory, and let's just do this just to, get the curve down, and we're not overwhelming the hospitals, right? Because that's just all you hear is overwhelming the hospitals. Mm-hmm. Too many people are going to get sick. They're going to be lining out the door to the hospital, and there's not going to be enough room for them because, again, the models were so in the exponential growth
Mm-hmm.
of the disease, of the virus. So, yeah, I was willing to give that the 2 weeks. And then it's like, if you say anything, it's like, well, you wouldn't be saying that if it was your parents or if it was actual children that were dying. Nobody would have an argument with it. It's like, well, all right, let's give it that 2 weeks. Okay, so then that's why I fought you on that, because like, no, let's do this. Let's be really careful. So that's what I did, and me and Kirsten are checking our temperature every morning. Making sure
I didn't know you were doing that.
Oh, yeah, we're checking our temperature every morning. Oh, yeah. No, I was Cloroxing everything, doorknobs, everything. But I tend to be that way anyway. I sanitize a lot. So it didn't take me long, though, after that 2 weeks where I started to panic. And not panic, but really was concerned more. And you told me there is no way they're going to open it back up. So I got a little nervous about that. There's no way they're not going to stop at 2 weeks. And yeah, you were right. And so then what really made me panic was I was afraid you were going to lose. They were going to close down all the construction sites, and then you were going to lose your job. And we support a lot of people and loved ones,
Mm-hmm.
our son in particular. And that was just brought me a lot of anxiety and so nervous. And I'm like, no, this is ridiculous. And then right away, you started hearing about abuse cases already coming up. And then
you mean child abuse? Yeah, child abuse went up, skyrocketed.
And they're saying, well, it's not as reported as much. Well, that's because they're not at school and the teachers aren't reporting it. But there is no way. It's a perfect storm for child abuse, spousal abuse, alcoholism, drug abuse.
Yeah,
and so
I think alcohol sales went up 30% or something like that.
You just start meeting all these things. So so now I am much more afraid about the economy than I am the actual virus. And now I'm super frustrated. I think it's super ridiculous. And now they're making us wear masks, and I want to
Of course, that's
revolting.
that's like the worst thing in the world for you, right? Because you won't even wear a jacket when it's cold because you're afraid it's going to ruin your look.
Okay, stop. I don't want a mask on my face.
Just so everyone knows,
can't
when we go out to eat or whatever and she's cold and I give her my jacket, she'll like lay it on her leg or wear it backwards because she thinks it ruins the look if she puts it on normal.
I'm warm that way.
Okay.
I don't like being feeling like I'm I don't know. Squished.
Okay.
So the thought of putting something on my face,
Right.
like, I'm never going to show up at HEB until all this is over. I think it makes me.
We're gonna starve
Yeah.
to death, Nolan.
Anyway, and now come to find out that it's all grossly exaggerated and just nothing is what they tell you that it is.
Yeah.
And it. So have the old people stay home and have the young people go back to work. That's what they need to do. We have an incredible sense of our own perseverance.
Preservation.
Preservation. Thank you. Always get that word wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody wants to die. So if you're afraid, stay home.
Yeah, and see, I think like I've said before, I think that if they would have come out and said this virus could kill, I think the original estimates was 2 million if we did everything.
2 million.
If we did everything right.
It was 2 million.
If we did everything right.
Yes.
In other words, the model that everyone's going off of, which is the University of Washington model, I think it's University of Washington, is that they had two sides: if we do nothing and if we do everything possible,
That you're supposed
right?
to
Which
do.
they said neither one is what's going to happen. You're never going to do nothing, and you're never going to do everything. But that was the two sides, and I think the do everything possible model at the offset they said 2 million dead, and then they slowly been knocking it down, and now I think they're down to What are they down to 60,000? Maybe they're saying now, predicting if we do everything, it'd be 60,000, and we're at like 35 maybe at the moment here in the U.S. And so yeah, they've been decreasing that, and the reason is, and this isn't cynical. They're not. It's not that there's some plot here, but they just don't have good numbers coming in. And so they're looking at China, they're looking at Italy, and however models work. But then a lot of decisions were made based on this type of information, and people like you got very scared. You see that you're like 2 million people dead, which to me that's just not a lot of people. I know. I mean,
No.
if it's you or someone you care about, or it's in your neighborhood, it's a lot of people. But
Yeah.
I mean, as far as like terrible pandemics, when you have 350 million people in a country and 2 million die from a pandemic, I think you got off pretty easy. If you look at the percentage of people who died in 1900 from the Spanish flu epidemic, it's probably close to that. So I mean, yeah, it's a terrible thing. It's a pandemic, right? It's a horrible thing.
Of course.
But then you have to ask yourself, how many people are going to die from poverty, from abuse, from starvation? They've already said that 500 million, half a billion people slip back into poverty in the world. And by poverty, we're not talking about poverty U.S. standards, right? Where you don't have enough money to make the rent,
Right.
and you're living on government assistance. We're talking about worldwide poverty, which is like less than $1 a day.
Yeah.
So these are people that could very likely starve to death.
Yes, they can.
And this is directly due to the economic shutdown. And we're talking about a worldwide one. I have no idea what that is going to mean.
The ramifications.
No, I don't think nobody knows what the ramifications of this is going to be.
Yeah.
Nobody knows. And anyone who has work might think, well, it's no big deal. And that's the thing. A lot of the people that are saying it's no big deal are journalists, politicians, senior citizens who get either they have retirement checks,
They're
they have
already
pension
out of
checks.
the workforce.
Well, and they have their money coming in every month.
Right.
The thing that unifies all the people saying it doesn't matter is that they get a monthly
Yeah.
paycheck.
Yeah.
Journalists are still being paid. Now, a bunch of them have been
They're
laid off,
getting laid
and
off.
all of a sudden they're changing their tune too. And all of a sudden they're like, hey, we can't shut everything down.
Yeah.
People need the newspaper.
Yeah.
Well, they don't actually need a newspaper. That's not essential business. But anyways, you got and senior citizens are getting either Social Security or pension checks, and so they're like sitting there saying, why can't everyone just, get along? Why can't everyone cooperate? But if you're sitting at home and your mortgage payments are piling up and your car payments are piling up, and I mean, most people, they don't even have $300 cash in the bank,
No.
which is why we've been telling people at Freeborn Church for so long to get out of debt and to save money.
Right.
Right. And anyone who listened to that message, not just from us, there's a lot of people saying this, right? But anyone who listened to that and actually got out of debt and saved up money, they're doing a lot better right now. Right now, you're thinking, if you're out of debt, you're thinking, I am very glad I'm out of debt. I mean, I'm very happy we're out of debt.
Of course.
If this would have happened 12 years ago when we were drowning in debt, can you imagine where we would be right now?
No, we'd be really, really scared.
Yeah,
we'd
we'd be
protesting. I'd be the only one picketing at the Capitol.
And what's funny is you're
up the
saying that you keep
government.
saying you want there to be a protest so you can go march in it.
I do.
And you've
I'm
never been
really-
wanted to march in a
no,
protest.
never. This is just I have an adversity, I guess, and I guess I always have to just. I'm a rule follower up until a certain point, and then I don't know. I've just It feels like we're living in the twilight zone almost. It's like the government has I can see the power and the power grabs from so many government officials, and everyone is going along. I mean, you have those few, know, that they realize that this is that they are infringing on our freedoms and the choices that we have as Americans and as citizens, and our rights. And I see how easily they just want to come and just take those. And it's just like, no. And so this whole mandatory mask wearing thing. And I know for a lot of people, it's not a big deal. It's like, well, we all do our part and we're all in this together, which I want to vomit every time I hear that phrase. and then, so then I looked up, okay, so I know there was as of, I don't know, a couple of days ago, there was about 37 deaths in San Antonio, which is sad. But people die every day. So there's 37 deaths of the corona. And so I looked up the census, how many people there are in San Antonio, and it's grown a lot. So there's 2,500,000 people in San Antonio, and that does not even include the surrounding
2,500,000 or 2,500,000?
2,500,000. 2,500,000 people.
Okay.
Yeah. 2.5 million.
2.5 million.
2.5 million people. So that's like 0.000. So why are we wearing masks? There's plenty of room in the hospitals. They're actually laying people off. They're not letting you do any kind of elective surgery. So you have all this space. You have all these hospital beds.
Yeah, and I know for a fact there's empty hospitals because I've worked in hospitals that went out of business and they're sitting there empty. There's a huge hospital out there called Forest Park out there on I-10 that's state-of-the-art luxury hospital that I helped build, and it never opened. It's just sitting there still.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a hospital the government could put a military personnel in immediately.
Right.
And be in business. Yeah.
Right.
So, yeah. Well, I mean,
I don't want anybody to get sick. So it's hard. If you're afraid that you're going to get sick, then you should stay home.
Yeah, and like what I was going to say was, and we kind of I got distracted, I guess, a little bit. But my point was that if they had not instituted a forced lockdown on these things, we would essentially be where we're at now. I don't think much would change. I think that we would still be all hunkered down in our houses.
Right.
I think restaurants would all be closed pretty much because nobody would be there. Now, they'd be open probably. There'd be restaurants open. I think that a number of restaurants, if they hadn't been forced by the government to close, would have found ways to allow you to eat at the restaurant safely, at least where you felt safe, right? As safe as you're going to be anywhere else. And so, maybe they would have put partitions in the restaurant. I mean, restaurants would have gotten very creative with ways in which you could go there and get food. I think this whole drive-through business is just ridiculous. I mean, I work in construction. And so, we eat out a lot because I like to go in somewhere where I can wash my hands because usually job sites do not have anywhere to wash your hands. They're supposed to by law. OSHA requires them to.
Do they even have soap?
Where?
In the construction sites?
They
where
don't
you can
have
wash your
water.
hands?
Let's start with water.
Okay.
They're supposed to. By law, OSHA requires them to have a hand washing station, so many hand washing stations per person, and they're supposed to have soap and disinfectant and paper towels. All that's by OSHA law. Of course, very few job sites do this.
Right.
Only
okay.
the really big ones where they're real big on safety, real big, and they'll have that. So certain general contractors will do it, but most of them do not. Right, Nolan? I would say 99% of them do not have
99.9.
do not have any water, right, and any way to do that. And so I like to go to a restaurant. I like to sit at a table. You know me, I hate drive-through. I hate takeout.
Yeah.
I want to sit at a table. I want to eat the food hot.
Yeah.
I want to have somewhere I can wash my hands. Now it's like go through the drive-through. Well, everyone's filthy. Their hands are filthy. They've been touching everything. And then they go through and they're eating food through the drive-through. They have nowhere to wash up, no way to do that. I don't think that is actually making anyone safer. I think it's actually counterproductive. I think more people have gotten the disease and other diseases because of the way it's being handled now.
Well, yeah. I mean, even the masks say at the grocery stores, but they're not enforcing gloves. And that's what I think about, because I'm a person that I wash my hands all the time naturally. I carry wipes in my car. I wipe down my hands after, second I walk in the door, the first thing I do is wash my hands. So I'm very aware of that. But because you're touching. They grab an item, you grab an item, you grab a fruit, they grab a fruit, you touch the pad on the debit
the pay.
thing. Everyone's touching the same thing. So to me, that's even more contagious that way.
Well, have you seen the picture of the guy with the gloves? He's wearing gloves at like the supermarket, and he's on his phone, so he had to take off the glove. So he put the glove in his mouth and pulled off the glove, so the glove is hanging from his mouth, and he's using his phone. The caption was, "We have a winner."
Yeah, that's good.
What's that?
The thing is that they've already said that masks are only for people that are sneezing on your face or you sneezing on somebody else's face. But here in Texas, nobody's going to grocery stores coughing or sneezing. That's a good way to get shot here in Texas. Everybody's going to pull their gun out and shoot you.
I know. Me and Kirsten were at Target, and I had a tickle in my throat, so I was coughing. She's going, "No, stop it. Stop it now. Stop coughing." I'm going, "I know, I'm trying."
Well, I actually don't have a problem with the masks, personally. I actually think that the mandating masks is not a terrible thing. I don't think it's a terrible overreach of power. I think that it's lamentable that has become like kind of the rallying cry for those that are upset about this. I think they've missed the point of what the problem is. Because here's the issue. Like I said, if we had done nothing about any of I say nothing, if the government had mandated nothing. So let's say that no state, no city.
What about quarantining the elderly, though?
Nothing mandated. I'm not saying we don't do anything. I'm saying we don't do anything by federal or state or local mandate. The federal government, the state governments, local governments come out and say, there's a virus. We don't know anything about it. It looks like it's going to kill a lot of people. Our model suggests it could kill up to 20 million people in the country if we don't do anything, if we don't protect ourselves. These are measures that can be taken in times like this to protect yourself. You can not leave. You can stay home. You can do these things. And they could come out and give all this information. If they would have done just that, because of, like you say, the self-preservation of a people, a whole lot of people would have basically be where we're at now. Because even though Texas is technically on lockdown, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's open. Every job site's wide open. They haven't shut down a single job site.
Yeah, that's great.
And I work all over. I work in Houston, I work in Austin, I work in San Antonio. Yeah. There's not a single job site that is shut down. Two job sites in Austin shut down for like 3 days. And then they decided they couldn't do that, and they opened back
small
up.
businesses wouldn't have closed.
Is that they shut them down for an evaluation from the city.
So is that what happened?
So the city came into these job sites and basically told them what needs to happen. They need to be signing in. There's now they only allow a certain amount of people in elevators because they went through and measured everything. They have numbers on the doors of how many people can actually be in those rooms.
Which is so silly. If you've been in that elevator, you've been there. So the elevator is a small elevator, and they say you can only have 3 people in. But I mean, honestly, 2 people in that elevator, you're going to be closer than 6 feet together. Yeah. It's real dumb.
Right.
It's all about appearances.
Yeah.
This is all.
I mean, they make it feel like you're doing something about it.
And that's a problem with when the government does something. So when the government does things, a lot of what the government does is about looking like they're doing something. They want people, because they're all there by votes or by appointment from someone who is voted in. And so it's very important that everyone think, oh, they're really doing something, because they want to be able to then in their election say, you saw us, we really were doing something. But most of what things they're doing is just absolutely ridiculous. I mean, it's never going to work. It's not going to have any real impact on anything, except to impact it financially is the only impact this has. But going back to my point, and my point is we would be in the same place if the restaurants would be shut down and going out of business, because nobody would be eating there. People are not going to go.
It was already happening.
Yeah.
Before they shut
Oh, absolutely.
down.
Yeah, there was very few people, but I don't think these small businesses would have shut down. I don't think hair salons would have shut down, or nail salons. The one here in Lavernia closed down at the very last possible second they could, and my mom and I squeezed right in the day before they were actually had forced to close.
Yeah,
and
I can see that on that one. I'm mainly speaking of restaurants and places where you go and people are like preparing your food and you're putting it in your mouth.
Okay.
I think people look at the hair salon thing and think that's ridiculous, because they're not trimming my mouth hair.
No.
Right? They're not in my mouth. They're not in my nose. They're cutting my hair.
And no business owner wants their customers to be sick, so they would take precautions.
They would take a lot of precautions.
Because they want to keep their customers coming in, and they would want them to feel safe. So they themselves would probably wear a mask or gloves and have a big bottle of hand sanitizer right there for every customer.
And they wouldn't let people come in who are sneezing or coughing or things like that.
Because they want their business to keep going, because that's their life.
That's my point.
That is life.
My point is, when I say we would be the same position, is there would be people locked at home. There'd be a lot of businesses shut down. Restaurants, I think, would be basically out of business, except for the ones that were able to figure out ways.
Remove some tables and
put up divisions. I imagine they would put up, just like H-E-B and grocery stores have done. They've put all their Buc-ee's, they put all their tellers behind plexiglass now, so that you can keep going in and buying things.
Right.
And they're preparing food there. And, they would have done things like that.
Exactly.
But when the government comes in and says, no, we're just going to tell you what to do, then they shut off all that innovation. No innovation is being done. The government's not innovating anything.
Nope.
So what is the government's solution now to the look that they're not going to solve it in 2 weeks or in 3 weeks? Their only solution is keep it locked down. That is their only solution. And that is because they have taken over the entire economy. They have taken over the entire social fabric of the country. The government now runs your everything. They are now mandating in certain places how many people of your own family can be in your house. So they have taken over everything. And I know there's the conspiratorialists who are saying, well, they're trying to grab all this power they've never been able to grab. I really don't think that that's what this is at all. It's that the government has no way of innovating. They're not innovators. If it was up to the government, we would still be riding horses. We would not have a car in our driveway. We wouldn't have a driveway if it was up to the government. The government doesn't like change because they don't understand it and they don't compute it, and they're worried what it would mean to their election. So they want to keep everything the same. That's why when any new industry comes in, they start subsidizing the old industry so it doesn't go out of business. I can guarantee if you look into the federal budget deep enough, you're going to find that there's probably subsidies for horseshoe makers. Still subsidizing some crazy business that is completely never being obsolete. And there's no one hardly doing it, but there's some 3 families somewhere up in eastern Pennsylvania maybe who are still making horseshoes for horses, and they're like, we have to keep this business alive because the government likes it to stay the same. They don't want innovation. And so because the government has taken everything over, there's no way we're going to innovate our way through this. It's not going to happen because they've just immediately shut everything down.
Yeah.
If they hadn't have done that, I think that the country would have innovated and we would have found a way to make the economy go much, much better than it is now.
Yeah.
They wouldn't be now they're talking about $2,000 a month, right? A month in subsidy payments and stimulus checks coming in.
Well, that's all great, but isn't somebody's going to run out of money?
We already ran out of money.
So what, are they printing money? I
Of
heard
course.
they're printing money.
Well,
and
that's
then
what they've been doing for
devalues
years.
the dollar.
Right. That's right.
So then taxes rise.
Well, that
and-
is taxation. Devaluation is taxation.
Is taxation.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the money that you had saved, the moment they start sending out $2,000 a person in checks every month to everyone because they're going to keep things locked down now for another
Because
month,
it's
2
never
months, 3
free.
months.
There's never free money.
No, of course not.
Yeah.
No, there's no such thing.
There's no.
Yeah, that's the famous Milton Friedman quote. There's no such thing as a free lunch.
Right.
It costs somebody something somewhere. And what people don't realize is they're like, well, we're going to charge the taxpayer, the rich people. They're going to pay for this. There's not enough rich people in America. If you took all the money away from the likes of Bezos and Gates and all these ultra billionaires, if you
Yeah.
took every penny they owned away, which the idea that they're like have piles of cash is silly. They have value in the economy, and their money went down too when the economy crashes, because most of their wealth is stocks, which is only wealth on paper. It's not like they actually have like a house full of money somewhere.
Yeah.
But even if you took every penny away that they owned, you couldn't send everyone a check. That was that famous quote about Bloomberg that he spent he spent $1 billion or $500 million on his campaign, and the CNN anchor said they could have sent every American $1 million, and it's like
Yeah.
terrible
Oof, that
math.
was bad math.
Yeah, because they're thinking that person is thinking $500 million that would feed the whole country for a year. It's like, no, that's like less than like $1 a person or
Right.
something. It's like nothing.
Right.
People don't realize that there is that we don't have that much money. When they say we're going to send $1 trillion out, we don't have $1 trillion. There's no $1 trillion locked away somewhere. That's just silly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah. I mean, I think if the government would have got it. Now here's going back to where I was. So I know it's a long point, but I like to make long points. With that, you wouldn't
even
change
know where
that.
you were?
You wouldn't change that about me?
You said I could pick one. If I could change two things, maybe.
You can change two things. That's true. I did say that. So now you made me lose my train of thought. I had it all together. Had it all figured out. Shoot. I forgot what I was going to say.
Going back to where you were about government, man.
Well, yeah. In other words, the government wouldn't have done that. Okay. So here's the fear. Here's what I think is the real fear. So I told you when we first started all this, you didn't agree with me.
You're going to tell me what my real fear is?
No, what it should be your real fear.
What should be?
What should be. Because I
Okay.
told you when this all first started that there's no way in the world that after 2 weeks they could possibly lift the lockdown.
Well, no, because you have more death, and you have one more death. We got to keep it closed.
That's
more.
right. And it wasn't like the coronavirus. They can look at it in a microscope and there's going to be some like expiration date on it. And they go, oh, it's going to go away in 2 weeks. I told you this is never going to go away. Coronavirus is here to stay. We've been battling the common cold for 100 years. Well, actually, for a lot longer than that. But medicinally,
Right.
we've been battling it for over 100 years. Been looking for cures for it for over 100 years. People die every day from the common cold. People die every day from the flu. We get the flu seasonally. You can get the flu multiple times in your life. Not just once. Not like once and you're immune. You can get the flu every year. Some people get it all the time.
Yeah.
And so this is never going away.
Even with the flu shot.
That's right. Even with the flu shot. And look at that. When people say, well, this isn't the flu because this is a lot more deadly than the flu. But the flu, this is after years and years and years of developed immunity to it, vaccinations for it, with medical treatments for it,
Right.
medicinal treatments for it. We have all these things centered around the flu, and we worry about it every year. And every year, more people die from the flu than have died from
Yes,
coronavirus
yes,
so
and
far.
children and babies.
That's right. Lots of people die from this. So this is never going away. That was my point. And so at the end of 2 weeks, they're not just going to say, okay, let's go back to work. Because then you're like, well, people are dying faster now than they were 2 weeks ago. Why are we can't go back to work? And people keep saying we're going to peak. I don't think we're going to peak for a couple more weeks, personally. I think it's going to be at least a couple more weeks before they peak. And even then, peaking at, let's say we're 3,000 people, 4,000 people a day are dying, and they peak. Well, that's still 4,000 people a day. They're not going to take the lockdown down, because then they're going to say it's going to go back up, and that's what's happened. Mm-hmm. China, they're finding people that have had it, and they have no immunity to it, and they got it again. Mm-hmm. So then it's like, well, now what are we going to do? And then how do you save face with that? Anyways, so my prediction was they were not going to lift the lockdown, that this lockdown was going to ruin the economy, that this was a horrible decision. So, and then now people are on board with me. I'm on the bleeding edge. Yes.
No, because I follow a lot of people on Twitter.
And they're brilliant, and I'm stupid.
It's real news, okay? It's real news.
It's real news.
And they have said
just
this
so everyone
from the beginning. But yes, but very few people have
very
said this.
few.
Very few. And so there are a few people who I really respect, really like, besides you, who have said this never should have been done. This was bad from the very, very beginning. It should not have been done. That there are ways that you can protect our elderly and still keep the largest economy in the world going. People depend on the United States.
Yeah.
People all over the world, they're desperate that if we go under, what does that do for everybody else? All these countries who depend on the money that we send to them.
Mexico's peso is now at 25 pesos a dollar.
Oh, yeah, it's devalued.
It's devalued.
That's
terrible.
terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one other thing that happens, and this is what people need to realize, and this is something else I said from the beginning. If the U.S. tanks and destroys its economy at levels we've never seen before. Yeah. So if we come out of this, let's say in a month, things were basically technically out of lockdown. I predict we're going to be north of 30% unemployment, which the Great Depression was 24% at its highest for only a short amount of time. I predict we'll be close to 30% unemployment. There's going to be a massive amount of bankruptcies, both personal and corporate. Tons of companies, they're already bankrupt. Many of them know it. Many of them don't know it yet, but they're already bankrupt. The idea that they're going to come out in the news say, attention, the lockdown has been lifted. You can go back to your restaurants. And everyone's going to flood into the restaurants?
No,
nobody's going back to the restaurants.
Yeah.
Not for a very long time.
Yeah.
Not for a very long time. And restaurants can't take not even a 10% decrease in traffic. Right? The idea that restaurants, if half the people come back, they'll be okay. No, they won't. Restaurants are at an extremely small margin.
Margins, yes.
Very, very small margin. And so they need to be filled all the time. That's why restaurants are always going out of business, even ones that you frequent, right? You go to a restaurant, you like it, all of a sudden it's closed. You're like, well, there's always people in there. Not enough. It takes a lot of people all the time. So the restaurant business in America is done for as we knew it for a very, very long time. For a very long time. It's done for as we knew it. And grocery business in America is probably going to do pretty good because people
Toilet paper business is going to be great.
Well, not after this is over, because everyone has piles of it, which I have never understood that.
No, I know.
That's the craziest thing. Yeah. Anyway, so here's the real danger going forward, and here's my prediction.
This is what I should be afraid of.
This is what you should be afraid
and then
of.
We should give some good news after this.
Well, you have to give that because I'm not good at good news. I thought
maybe I would change that.
Yeah, maybe you would change that I'm not a consoler.
No, you're not a consoler. Do not go to Michael for consolation.
Oh, yeah. I call him. I called one of our guys who hire us. He told me, we're going to have work, probably 12 months, bid out, right? And he goes, well, that doesn't guarantee any of those jobs are going to happen. Because if they just run out of money, they just run out of money, and then we have no work.
That's it.
Oh, yeah. He goes, so we have maybe 3 months, 2. Maybe not even that. It's like, good grief.
No, I know. You can be a little doomsday. That's true. You can. Which is why I tend to reject at first a little bit of the things that you say.
Is that why you reject the things I say?
Probably
at first, a little bit, a few things.
Tiny little bit.
A little tiny bit. Yeah. Just so everyone knows.
Does everybody have to know this?
Everyone needs to know this. Just so they know what I live with. See, you all think that she's the saint because she has to live with me. This is what I live with. Okay? I live with, if I say something, hey, we're no way the lockdown's going to be over in 2 weeks. What? That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. What? No, I'm so sure. There's incredibly smart people, and what do you know? And you didn't even graduate high school. You don't know nothing. You're the stupidest thing you've ever said. You don't say that. Okay, I'm exaggerating a smidgen, just a smidgen, little hyperbole to make my point. And then she'll talk to anyone on the planet that says the same thing, and then she'll come back. You'll never believe what I heard. It was the most brilliant thing I've ever heard. They said there's no way it'll end in 2 weeks. I'm like, really?
It would be kind of silly for me just to
No, I love that about you.
take your word and
No, I agree.
all these crazy things. I got to look it up
Brett
myself.
says that you sacrificed for all humanity by marrying him.
You took a hit for all humanity.
That's what people tell me. Yeah. I don't know.
No, just so you know, and I want to go on the record. I would never change that about you. I like that you push back and you make me argue my point. People wonder, like Josh Kendall was here last week, and he said that it's almost impossible to convince me of anything. He said it was like arguing with a rock.
Yeah. Poor guy.
And the reason why I'm that way is because I've had to argue with her for 28 years.
I'm so sure.
You made me what I am. Oh, we got a phone call. Okay, here, we're going to take a phone call.
All right.
And then I need to go to my point of what we really need to fear. Don't let me forget
haven't
that.
gotten there yet.
Hold on. Yes? Hello? Hello?
Can't hear you.
I can't hear you. You have to call back. We had a phone call. I don't know if they're trying to call for the show or not. Probably so. Anyways, so here's what I think you really need to fear.
Well, thank you for giving me something to be afraid of.
The reason I say we really need to fear something else other than the economy is because my point is, I don't think that much would have changed. I think we would be very much in the same position as we are right now if the government had not mandated anything. I don't think things would have changed, be that dramatically different at the moment. See, that's what I think people need to realize. I think the economy was going to tank. Now, Brett says that this has a lot to do with the media driving the paranoia.
Of course.
And that may be.
There's no doubt, Michael. There is no doubt. If you just watch it for 5 minutes, it's just on the screen, just like in bright letters, it's just constant. I can understand why people are so afraid of,
But here's the problem I have with that. And maybe Brett wants to get in on this and I don't know. But here's my problem with that. We've had pandemics and diseases come through as deadly as this one within the last 50 years. For instance, H1N1 is still more deadly than this virus has been. Up to a half a million people died from H1N1, and it was reported worldwide.
Yeah.
Worldwide, 500,000 people worldwide from H1N1. That's the upper end of the estimate, and that's the lower end is like 200,000.
Within what time frame was that?
But during the time, it was like I forget how long it lasted. The actual, the bulk of it, but maybe 6 months. Within 6 months.
That many people within 6 months.
Yeah.
Really?
Oh yeah, it was very deadly.
I'll have to
Absolutely.
look that up.
Yeah, I know. And people are still dying from it.
Okay.
It's not gone away.
Right.
H1 swine flu is still around.
Now I heard that SARS kind of just poof went away.
No, it's still around.
Okay.
It's just SARS is not very contagious.
Right. That's
SARS
what
is
I was
actually
maybe.
more deadly. This is SARS 2.
Yes, I understand.
Okay, so SARS 1 is more deadly than this, quite a bit more deadly, but far less contagious,
I see.
far less infectious. It's harder to
Okay.
get SARS 1
Okay. Right.
than this,
Right.
but this is more deadly. Anyway, so we've had a number of these, and the media, they don't, that's what they report. They report whatever is interesting, okay? I don't think the media has an agenda to create panic. I don't think they have an agenda to not create panic. Even the worst version of the media you can think of, I really don't think they sit around looking for something that can create panic. And I think that's how they're being portrayed, and I think that's just not fair. I think that this would have been pretty much as unless the media had conspired to not create panic, which to me would be just as bad as conspiring to create panic, unless they'd done that, I think people would be just as paranoid as they are now. I think that, look, the media did not come out saying, quick, go buy all the toilet paper.
Yeah.
And yet
That's
people
true.
ran out and bought all the toilet paper
That's
up. Why did they do that?
Mm-hmm.
There are, we live in a viral world because of our social media, because of all the things we have going around us. He got tired of listening to my voice. He takes off the earphones, and that tells me he's sick of me.
That's get to your point.
That's, yeah, get your point.
Pretty soon, everyone takes off the earphones. Because of our social medias, because of the Facebook, because of all of these things, our panic just runs through. We're naturally, I think human beings are given to that. And they tend to do these things. And I think we would be in the same position. I don't think it's actually the media driving it. I think there is much being driven by the panic as everyone else. I don't think they're the ones driving it.
I don't know about that.
But
because
I think
you
it's-
hear too many people that you would normally think, surely they think this is an overreaction. And they don't. They think it's completely necessary and fine. And I think it's because we've been convinced and we've been terrified and we're afraid, but not really rationalizing it, that we take risk every single day that we're willing to take. I mean, if you think about your teenagers and your kids, the number one killer of young people are car accidents.
Yes, absolutely.
And yet parents buy their 16-year-old kids cars every day.
Yep.
Kids are getting cars because you take that risk knowing that's the number one killer. If your child is going to die at an early age, it's usually by a car accident.
Oh, yes.
Tragic. And that's why parents, you're scared. Every time they leave the house, you're scared and you're thanking the Lord for his mercy every time they drive up the driveway. I mean, I lived it
Yeah.
all the time. But yet we take that risk because they need their independence and for 1,000 different reasons.
Yeah. Yeah, but because life is risk. I mean,
Life is risk.
and there's going to be risks in it.
Now, I understand not overwhelming the hospitals and all that. That's how we started. But we're not there anymore.
But right, but that was all overblown also. And that was coming from faulty reporting. Now, this I do believe was largely I put this largely
Exactly.
on the media,
Yes,
this part,
yes.
the hospital part. Because they're reporting, they're saying Italy's hospitals are overloaded, right? And then you get people like Newt Gingrich saying this. But the problem is that Italy had red tape. It's a single-payer system, healthcare, government-provided healthcare, single-payer system, piles and piles and piles of red tape. You can't do anything there without going through layers and layers of bureaucracy. Right. And so they did not allow, Italy doesn't allow you to take a sick person from one hospital that's overcrowded to another town nearby that has a hospital that's
so they're
empty.
all loading up into one hospital.
And they're not legally, they cannot innovate.
Yeah.
They can't innovate. And so you look at it and go, oh no, Italy overloaded their hospitals. No, they didn't. They overloaded a few local hospitals, right? Mm-hmm. That's why Trump brings in these huge boats, right, that are set up for hospitals. They never used them, ever. They never used them. They set out there in New York Harbor and never were used because they thought this is going to happen. But we don't have these same issues, especially in ones that aren't run by the government, which is why having the government take over everything is going to exacerbate this problem. This is going to be, if they keep doing this, it's going to get worse and worse and worse. And we're actually going to have more and more people dying by the government takeover of the entire society. Yeah. Not because the government's evil. See, this is the mistake. I think people that think, well, the government's evil, they don't understand liberalism. They don't, classical liberalism. They don't understand the founding principles of the country. The government isn't evil. The government is inept. You have to look at, you can't look at people, you can't look at the media and say they're evil. They're not evil. Mm-hmm. They're just like you, right? They're just people. They live in a house too. They put on pants too. They eat cereal in the morning also. These aren't like some aliens who you can say are evil. They're just
And just like
inept.
every occupation, they're very bad employees.
Yes. Exactly.
So the government has a lot of very bad employees
And
and don't know what they're doing.
That's right, because talent is very rare.
Yes.
And every job requires talent. There is no job that doesn't require talent. And any talent is very rare. It doesn't matter if it's to staple papers. It doesn't matter if it's to process permits or drive nails. Every single possible thing you can do in life requires talent, and most people don't have the talent for that particular thing, right? And so, yes, you're going to have people working in government that you have to have them there. You have to get someone to do it, and they're not going to be talented for it,
Yeah.
and so they're not going to do it well. And then the government system, the way a government works, is it incentivizes you to do it poorly. The only incentive there is in government is to do things poorly, right? And that's because the incentive in government is to not. It is to not put your neck on the line. That's the incentive. So the government is much more likely to lock everything down longer rather than shorter, which is why I said it's never going to end in 2 weeks, because nobody's going to put their neck on the line and come out and say, okay, forget it, let's go back to work. Even if 10 million people die, we have to get back to work. We got to get the economy going.
No
we
one's
got
going
to
to say that.
No, nobody.
No.
Well, Trump will, but he won't follow through with it.
That's what I'm afraid of.
Yeah, I'm afraid of that too.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, the one reason why I think he got elected, why people want to elect him, is because he would say things that no politician ever before would say. And, I mean, he has done that. That's always been, I'm not a big Trump supporter. Never have been, still am not a big Trump supporter. I'm an anti-abortionist, and so, basically, so I vote for him. And he's done marvelously on that front, on the whole idea of judges and anti. I mean, we're gonna reap the benefits or the
Because of his
effects of that
presidency.
for years, for decades on the judges.
Right.
Right. He's basically flipped the Ninth Circuit to a conservative circuit, which is ridiculously crazy because that's been historically liberal forever. That's the whole California district.
And as soon as you lose probably Ruth
Ginsburg, yeah. If he wins back re-election, then he will make the Supreme Court conservative for the next 20 years.
Yeah.
Which will be enormous. Then you're talking about maybe overturning Roe versus Wade and states like, Utah and others like that are very conservative socially going anti-abortion. You're talking about enormous changes possible. So I support that about him. But pretty much everything else I don't. I don't like his economy, his economics. There's a lot of things that I don't agree with him. But one thing I think that why he maybe got elected was because he's willing to say things that nobody's willing to say. I just wish he would follow through with them. Anyways.
Well.
Brett says, Magda West says, hi, Terry. Great to see you.
Magda.
That's, Josh's wife.
Yeah.
Very good. Nice. It's good to talk to you. So anyways, here's what you need to fear.
Okay.
Going back to my original point.
You haven't already gotten there.
No, we haven't gotten there. So what we need to be afraid of, or what we need to be worried about, I should say. I don't say I'm not afraid of. I'm not afraid of it because there's nothing we can do about it. But there's something we need to be concerned with. And that is that what is the government going to do when this is over? This is the problem. If the government, and this is where I'm hoping Trump will grow a backbone. I know people think he has one, but he doesn't. I know you do. I know you do.
Okay, but that's another topic.
Okay, I think if he'll grow a backbone.
Okay.
Get the bone out of his head and put it in his back.
Stop. I think he does.
Okay,
You should listen to him deal with this.
I know he talks that way.
Okay, anyway.
But anyways,
go ahead.
If the government follows the 1920 example, which is Calvin Coolidge's example.
Okay.
Which when in the 1920s, people don't know this. In the 1920s, we had a number of recessions.
Okay.
Quite a few. It was up and down. The economy was up and down. But every time it would come up, and that was so the 1920s is called the Roaring 20s. Even though there were a number of recessions that were as bad or worse than the ones in the 30s.
Okay.
They were as bad or worse than the ones in the 30s.
Okay.
The difference, in my opinion, and the opinion of many economists, is that the reason that the 1920s never turned into the 1930s, were not a depression, was because Coolidge refused to involve the federal government in them. He did not try to fix them
He didn't
federally.
try to manipulate the whole system.
He just let it be. They called him Silent Cal. He talked very little. He believed in the federal government being very minimalist. He was probably the most minimalist president we've ever had. He did not involve the federal government in hardly anything. And so he just let the economy be. And it would go down, and then they'd bounce back up very quickly, and you'd have these recessions up and down. The government didn't get involved. The reason I believe, and Milton Friedman and Thomas Sowell and a number of economists believe, and I put my name right in there with them. The reason why these economists believe that I was looking at Brett's message, lost my train of thought. The reason why the economists believe that those recessions turned into a depression is precisely because FDR tried to solve the problem. Well,
Right.
Herbert Hoover did also, right? Calvin Coolidge always regretted nominating Herbert Hoover. Back then, it was much more where the president could really sway the election. He would kind of appoint his successor for the candidacy, not for the presidency, but within the party. Like even now, it's kind of Barack Obama had come out at the beginning of this election cycle and said Joe Biden's the guy, then there would have never been a primary. I mean, he just would have been anointed, and he didn't. But it used to be a lot that way. The outgoing president would have basically put the cloak right on his successor in the party, and he always regretted that because Herbert Hoover came in and did that, and then FDR just really doubled down. And that's the thing. FDR did not. People thought FDR came in and did crazy new things. He really didn't. He only did what Herbert Hoover was already doing in grand scale. And that sunk us into a depression that would have lasted 30 years. Probably would have lasted at least 30 years. His whole presidency would have lasted. The reason why we came out of it was because World War II and everyone got to work and we're making all these bombs. Of course, it ballooned our debt, right? But it got us out of the personal financial problems.
Right.
The war did. If the government takes that model, the FDR model, we are sunk. We are talking about a depression that is going to last over a decade. So it's all about what they do. So the points we're talking about is if they come out and say we're going to put price controls on rent. So you are no longer going to be able to raise the rent on anybody for 2 years. People are going to think this is wonderful. They're like, yes, that solves our problem. It doesn't.
Yeah.
People need to understand. Look, if you have not taken a course in economics, you need to do this. You need to study economics. Read a Milton Friedman book. Read a Thomas Sowell book. Listen to their lectures. Price controls are not a good thing.
Right.
Venezuela has price controls.
Yeah.
The reason why toilet paper is hard to find is because of price controls. Even though they're not federally mandated right now, they are pressured. If the grocery store, think about how this would play. If you went to the grocery store and toilet paper cost $30 a pack, everybody would be up in arms, screaming. They're trying to price gouge us. They're trying to take advantage of the situation, just like they do whenever the gas prices go up. When there's like some type of a problem, right? And then the gas prices go up, they're like, oh, these horrible gas companies are gouging people, which is completely ridiculous. It's so stupid, right? And so people don't think right. The best thing you can do whenever there's a run on toilet paper is raise the price.
I actually told one of the HEB managers, I don't know who was all there, but they had all these people in suits at that HEB, right? Like, I guess serious people. I go, and I asked them, did y'all raise y'all's prices on y'all's toilet paper? Oh, no, we would never do that, no. I'm like, well, that's your problem.
That's exactly right.
You're running out of toilet paper because they're all cheap. So I can buy 30 packs and take it home with me.
Right.
You raised it up to $30 a pack, then I'm only going to buy one. and people are probably not going to buy any, and they'll find a way to use something else.
No, but it's terrible optics. You can't do that. They won't do that.
Well, they would.
They won't raise the prices like that.
But this is the media. Now, this is where the media and their socialist leftist worldview comes out.
right.
Because a leftist sees that the price going up is bad for poor people.
Yeah.
And it's not. Because, so a leftist thinks that a large company like HEB can artificially or arbitrarily set a price. And so the idea so they say, like the gas companies, they're gouging people because they're just trying to gouge. They think that the fuel companies or the toilet paper manufacturers or the grocery stores can arbitrarily set a price wherever they want. They can't. They can't force you to buy it. They can only put a price at a point where people can buy it.
Right. On anything else, that's how the market works.
That's right.
Price is high on things that people want to buy.
The higher
When
the demand goes up.
The higher the price. When people don't want anything, the price is extremely low. That's why they say price says everything.
That's right. The price tells you everything. Yeah. What's better, a Ford or a Toyota? The price tells you everything you need to know. So if they would have raised the price on these things, and the media wasn't leftist, driving the agenda you're talking about, the optics is what's driven by the media, right? And that's because they're not evil, they're just leftists. They have a leftist worldview, and they think that when we're in a catastrophe, HEB ought to lower the price on everything or keep it the same, and then have to enforce how many you can buy, how many packs of pasta you can buy at a time. They're enforcing that on people, which is impossible to enforce because you have your kid go in and buy 3 and your other kid 3. And if you have 20 kids and they all buy 3 packs and you keep going back every day and buying 3 more and you go to every grocery store and buy 3 out of every grocery store and it just turns into a huge mess. You get what Venezuela has. The reason why Venezuela does not have toilet paper is because the price is too low. If the price were higher, they would have toilet paper. Every toilet paper manufacturer in the world would be selling toilet paper in Venezuela if the price was high enough.
Right.
And they would have toilet paper in every store.
Right, because they can't make any money when the price is low.
No, that's right.
Why would they make toilet paper?
Why would they do it? Yeah. And this is what happened with FDR. He put price controls on things, and all of a sudden, we didn't have enough food to eat, and they had to then ration it. Price controls lead to rationing. Rationing leads to starvation. Starvation leads to death.
Yeah.
And many people don't put these together. And they think the government coming out saying, we're going to price control rent, we're going to price control food, we're going to price control fuel. All that means is everyone that provides those things are disincentivized to provide them. This doesn't actually keep them from putting a price on things. The price gets baked in everywhere else. You think, well, rent is price controlled here, and so then I pay cheap rent. No, that cost that profit that the owner is losing is baked in to everything around you, everything, the whole world. Right. So they complain. They're like, well, New York has price control. San Francisco has price controlled rents. Yeah, but how much does it cost to live in New York?
A lot.
A lot. Because all that price control is baked in, and you always end up paying more for it, not the same.
Right.
So the idea that, and this is where people don't
more for very little.
Yes. No, I mean, exactly. And there's all of that extra is not just put in elsewhere, like distributed throughout the system, but even more so because it's more costly. Right? It costs the owner of the apartment more to find ways around that, to make up that money. So then that added cost is also baked in.
Yeah.
So it gets even more expensive. Everything goes up. And so Brett says that Michael is right about Trump needing backbone. Thank you, Brett. There you go.
Okay. Brett.
It says, even though the government took away your job, if it's for a limited time? Not sure I understand it.
Is he asking a question?
It's a she.
Okay.
He's asking a question if it's for a limited time. The problem is the government doesn't have jobs to give. So this is a mistake. See, the government can take away your job, but they can't give it back because they don't have jobs to give. Right? And government employees, I don't think, have lost any jobs. And we're going to find and that's another thing that the FDR model will be, is the FDR model will be that
they may be on furloughed. Because different places I've been to, like title place, those places, they were all closed.
Yeah, it doesn't mean they're not getting paid.
Right. Oh,
That-
right. That's true.
Yeah,
They're
we
at
could-
home and
I'm
they're getting paid.
I'm not aware of any government employees yet not being paid.
Okay.
And the thing about government employee is if you don't get paid, usually it's deferred. And you can actually go to your bank, your credit union, and they'll give you a loan. They'll actually pay you your wages and take it out with interest
Okay.
when it gets back. Because
Well, that's
government
probably
employees basically never don't get paid.
Right.
Ever.
Right. Okay.
Now, this could change things because you're talking about a massive amount of financial problems coming down the road. So who knows what that's going to mean for them.
Yeah.
But government employees, I don't think, are not being paid, which is why they tend to be on board with these things. Anyways, the government doesn't have jobs to give. So if the government locks down, they cannot force a company to not go out of business unless then they take over the company and nationalize it. So that's the other thing. That's then moving past the FDR model where they try to force everyone to control prices, ensure jobs. You can't fire anybody. Think about that. What if they come out? What if the government comes out and says, you can't raise your prices on anything? You cannot fire anybody for 2 years. Do you know what that means to the economy? That's disaster. Disaster. What happens when an employee knows he can't be fired for 2 years?
Can't even imagine. Be terrible.
It's terrible.
Yeah. 'Cause-
Terrible.
Yeah.
As soon as there's rumors that you're not going to be able to fire anybody, it's going to be massive firings and layoffs. Massive. Anybody in that
Just get rid
company
of the
who
weakest
you think
link.
are, what's that?
Get rid of the weakest link.
That's right. Any dead weight, anyone you think might be dead weight, anyone you suspect you think might be dead weight is gone. You're talking about massive firings. If they don't come out and pass that in the dark, in the dead of night, where nobody knows it's coming, it's going to be a massive spike in unemployment when that happens. Because every company knows they have 20, 30, 40% of their workforce that there's no way they could afford for them to think they can't be fired, and they're just going to get rid of them. They'll just get rid of them and pay the unemployment penalty to do it and not have them on because there's no way they're going to guarantee those people's jobs for 2 years. Yeah.
Well, then you're talking about full-on socialism, and I don't know if I necessarily see it going in that direction
that-
so soon.
I do.
Or, yeah,
I don't think the government can resist it.
I don't know.
And I
Jerry,
don't
we'll
think it's
see.
out of evilness. I don't think it's because Trump wants, let's say that it's Biden running the company at this time.
He's a businessman.
I know. Like I said, I don't think Trump wants socialism. But people don't equate the protections that they're going to offer as being socialism. For instance, if
Well, because they force this on everybody, right? So they want
That's
to now
right.
try to fix it.
that's right, that's my point.
Yeah.
They're like, you have to do something. You made us shut down.
You made us do this.
You have to do
now
this.
do something about
You
it.
have to do something to help us get started. That's the worst thing they could possibly do. And this is why they shouldn't have done the lockdown.
Yeah.
Because now they're kind of morally on the hook.
Yes, they are.
Now, if I was Trump, I would come out and say, I should have had a backbone, and I didn't, but now I do. And we're not doing anything. You're all on your own.
Yes, but that's
Good luck,
political suicide.
and God bless
and he
America.
has to be reelected. That's not going to happen.
Right.
He has to be reelected.
Exactly. That's my point. And so I think he will follow the FDR model. And because of the massive economic catastrophe that's coming, we're already there. People don't know it because they're sitting at home watching Netflix and everything looks the same. They don't know that their job is gone. 30% of you, your job is gone. It's gone.
Michael.
It's not there no more. That company is dead.
Okay, so they say
Right, you have a whole restaurant chain that just went out of business, and a lot of these businesses in small towns, they're done.
right.
I mean, there's I wouldn't say 30%, but
I think it's about 30%. And most economists are saying, look, they said 30%, and now they've blown past it. I'm giving you the conservative number. I just read over 40% unemployment. That's massive. I don't know if you realize 20% unemployment is depression. 20% is depression. Think about the depression and what that meant. That's 24% at its very highest, and the average, I think, was 16% unemployment in America.
so we're gonna be double depressed.
Okay, here, they clarified. So the question was, I'm sorry, I meant people are getting out of rent because the government shut down the economy. Yes, the government has said they're putting a moratorium on rents. So the landlord can't kick you out of the house
Right.
because you can't pay the rent. And I'm not necessarily against that in a time like this. I mean,
You have to have some allowances.
well, let me try to. It's hard to explain. I think people hear, and this is a curse I have. I think people have a tendency to hear me and hear that I'm like advocating a position, and they don't realize that that's not how I think or how I speak, and so they tend to misinterpret what I'm saying. I'm misunderstood in my time.
And poor you. I feel so sorry for you.
So what I'm saying is that my point is looking at both sides and all sides of the matter and looking at it objectively. Okay, so I'm not necessarily advocating anything or against anything per se. But here's the point on the rent thing. The government mandates that you can't go to work. So then they have to mandate that the owner of the house can't charge you rent. But there's a couple things about that. First is the people that are renting houses are not billionaires laying on yachts smoking weed out of $100 bills.
The owners of the house.
The owners of the homes,
Right.
the renters, the people that are renting the houses.
Yeah.
They're not that way. These are just people, that's their livelihood. So then they have to tell whoever, the bank that has loaned those people the money to buy the house that they're renting to you, they have to tell the bank, you can't charge a mortgage. But the banks aren't people sitting on yachts smoking weed out of $100 bills either. Banks are owned by people. When you go and you put your money in a bank to save it, you open a savings account, you own a part of the house that is not getting paid because the rent's not getting paid.
Yeah.
So the guy who's renting the house is the same one who owns the bank that loaned the money to the person who bought the house that rented it to you. It's your money that you're shortchanging in the end. It's a big old circle.
Yeah,
The problem with leftists is they think the economy is run by people out there on a yacht somewhere, and that we're stealing from these rich people.
Yeah.
That isn't who owns the economy. The economy is owned by every single person.
It is. It's the people.
Yes. So when the bank goes bust, okay, so you don't pay your rent because the government says you don't have to pay your rent. Okay, fine. You don't pay your rent. The person who owns the house that rents it, the way he pays the mortgage is by paying with the rent. He doesn't pay the mortgage.
Yeah.
The mortgage can't foreclose on him because the government says can't foreclose on people because they're just giving free rent because whatever. Okay, so now the bank can't. Somewhere it is going to break. So what happens? The bank goes bankrupt. Where's your money? It's in the bank. It's just this huge cycle that people aren't aware exists because they live, especially Christians, live in such a myopic economic worldview. Christians are incredibly obtuse when it comes to economics, and it's sad. And it's not just me saying this. I know people hear that and they think that I'm so mean and horrible. Jesus said in one of his famous parables, his most infamous parables, his conclusion was that the children of this world are in their generation, in their time, wiser than the children of light. And what he was talking about was money. It was his whole parable on being friends with the unrighteous mammon so that they'll receive you in their eternal abodes and that's the parable, is all this parable on the unjust steward, and that the steward his job was going to be taken away. And so the steward said, well, I don't want to be a digger and I don't want to be begging. And so he made corrupt deals and he got himself out of his financial predicament by manipulating stuff.
Okay.
And there's a lot of ways to interpret that, and there's a lot of argument on what that means.
Right.
But the point is, on this parable, where you have this person that is probably an anti-hero in the parable, one of the few anti-heroes in the parable, where he's doing things that are ethically suspect, right? Jesus' conclusion was, the people of this world, worldly people, they're not stupid with money. But Christians are stupid with money. That's Michael's translation.
Okay.
That's my paraphrase. So that is the problem with Christians. They're stupid with money, not just finances. They're stupid with economics. They're obtuse, incredibly obtuse with it. They don't realize that every single thing you do like this.
Because they see money as worldly.
Yes.
You think that's why?
I do think that's why.
Right.
I think they find they. I think
too
they,
much emphasis on because they see it as, just worldly. It's too much emphasis on the devil's.
Right.
You know.
They think it. I think that many Christians, and I, the reason I think this, and I think that is because I used to think this way. Right.
Right.
So we had an opportunity when we lived in Mexico a long time ago. The house we were renting came up for sale.
Yeah.
For an incredibly cheap amount of money.
Yeah.
And I could have borrowed the money at that time very easily and bought that house.
Yeah.
And within a year, it had went up 5 times in value.
Yes, because of the location.
Oh,
it was great.
We all knew it. I mean, there was no doubt. It was prime real estate in that city. And the guy was selling it for next to nothing. And I should have bought it. And I thought about doing it.
Right.
And the reason I didn't was because my idea was the whole stupid hymn, I'm just a passing through, or, I have a mansion over the hilltop. I'm satisfied with just a cottage below. That whole Christian mindset of don't live for the world, don't be tied down. That was my mindset.
Okay.
Stupid. So I understand the mindset, I think. I was there. I thought that way. And it's wrong. It's not biblical. It's not spiritual to be stupid about money.
You're not saying that we tie ourselves down to this world and the only thing that matters in this life is money. Because that's what it sounds like you're saying. I think you should clarify that.
Okay. And that's why I love you, because you always want me to clarify things. And I don't ever clarify anything. And that's what you hate about me.
Because I know that if I didn't know you, I would think that you're probably the most worldly Christian I've ever met in my life. Like, what the heck?
Liz is wondering if you're using a broad brush when you say all Christians. But I think you just said Christians. I don't think you said all Christians.
Well,
right.
I'm generalizing.
Generalizing.
Right. I'm not saying there are not exceptions to this.
Right. I think there
right. Like Dave Ramsey's an exception. Right. And there's many. There's millions of Christians that are an exception.
Yes.
But I'll tell you this. Outside of the circle of my teaching and the teaching of Dave Ramsey and a few other Christians that aren't directly influenced by these things, I don't know of any that aren't this way. Personally. And that's anecdotal. That's not statistical.
Yeah.
But anecdotally, I don't know Christians outside of the circles of people like Dave Ramsey who have done a great, great service to the church to teach this.
Oh, yeah.
And so I don't think...
And he's had a huge influence on the American church, on American churches
and
Christians.
Yes. And here's the other thing, too, what Liz is asking. I'm not talking about finances. And this is what people need to understand. I think there's a lot of Christians who are good with their finances, right? They invest their money, they save money, they live without debt. That's all fantastic. Now, there's a lot that aren't. But I think predominantly, I would say, especially if we went back, let's say, to one generation. Our generation is in big trouble. Your generation is in really big trouble. They are. Because they're living in terrible debt and they have it's like being pushed on them from all directions, right? Yeah. So, but I think Christians historically have been very good with finances. That's why Christians have survived things so well, because of the biblical teaching of not loving the world, not being tied to the world. So when we look at it from a financial perspective, I think all of that is good, and we need to have a strong measure of that in our life, right? But from the economic perspective, and economics and finances are not the same thing.
Yeah.
They're different. And I find that Christians are illiterate, generally, on economics.
One of the things and I don't know if this goes along with what you're saying or not, probably not, but one of the things, like Dave Ramsey's teaching, and I think we try to model our life over this concept of building wealth, yes, that we agree with, and that's something that we strive for. But for ourselves, yeah, it's all nice, of course. It's, it's great. but it's to give back in the end. That's really what we want to do. So because I know you, and it's not about this world, about building was, it's about giving to our children. It's about giving to the church. I mean, you and I both have talked about if we were millionaires, we'd give it all and build a church building and have a church and give it to missions and, just do all this things you can do with it.
Yes.
To me, that's my goal. That I know that's your goal. That's what we would love to do at the end of our lives. Just live our best life and be good stewards of our money. Try to build wealth so that then we can distribute it to God's people.
Yeah, I just to go on kind of what you're saying there is that a lot of people that hear, Dad say, that he just wants to be rich, or
Right.
I guess to get that impression, he only cares about money. But really, I think all you've ever really done with any of the money you've ever made personally was buy things for the church. I think you were basically paying most of the rent for our church when we were there.
Not just us.
Not just us.
Right, but
you
yeah,
paid
good.
for
Yeah.
The carpet. I think that's what you mostly do with all your money is you spend it on your ministry.
Well, yeah, we've done that
You've always been that way, though.
Yes. So, but here, let me try to explain a couple things on this I think are important on all of these things, because we're getting a couple questions. Like, for instance, one person says, "Don't you think there's a danger for the average Christian to be more focused on money?" Okay. First off, the love of money is the root of all evil. I firmly believe that. I think it's translated properly in the King James Bible.
Yeah.
Even though I understand the other translations, but we won't go there.
No.
That's a whole different conversation. Anyways. Okay. Here's the problem. And this is one of my problem with my generation that I grew up with and around and the generation previous to me, which is what I have knowledge of.
Right.
They think that being bad with money is the same as not being concerned with money.
Exactly.
And that is a huge, huge mistake.
Yeah.
Being bad with money is not the same thing as not loving money. Being poor is not the same thing as not loving money. Some idea that only the people that work like dogs love money. First off, I'm going to tell you right now, if you're a person, and I'm not speaking to the person who asked this question, I'm just speaking to the general audience. Speaking to you and the camera, whoever you are. If you think that the people that work the hardest love the money the most, you're most likely mistaken. You don't understand economics. You don't understand human psychology. You don't understand what motivates people. I work very hard.
Yeah.
And it has almost nothing to do about the money. It just doesn't. I'm not saying I don't want to make more money. And I maximize my profits. But it isn't because I love the money. And you may not understand that, but it might be because you haven't ever actually done this. So
look at the car you drive.
Exactly. Look at everything
You don't
I have.
even have one.
I don't even have a car. Exactly. I have to borrow my wife's car when she'll let me.
Exactly.
Exactly. I mean, we bought this house, but it was because of 4 acres, not because of the house. I would have bought a cabin on 4 acres. If I could have bought a cabin on 100 acres.
You bought the house for me.
I did.
I love you for it, and I love my house.
So here, let me explain to you why people like Bezos. You think Bezos goes to work every day because he loves money? Do you think Bill Gates goes to work every day because he loves money? This is just nonsense. This doesn't even make any sense when you think about it.
They would go to work every day at 85 years old if they could.
They do.
Because they love.
Warren Buffett still goes to work every day.
Right, Warren Buffett does.
Third or fourth richest man in the world goes to work every day. You think it's because he loves money? It doesn't make any sense. This isn't it. So the idea that loving money is that you have wealth, that's not loving money. Now, I'm not saying no rich people love money. That's not what I'm saying.
No,
I'm not saying that these ultra-billionaires don't love money. See, people, you need to understand, you try to be a little more sophisticated, the audience, try to be more sophisticated in your thinking. Bill Gates may love money. I have no idea. But it isn't because he has $140 billion, and it isn't because he works every day to make more money. That is not a proof of loving money. And the person that's sitting at home watching Netflix and not going to work and has no money doesn't mean they don't love money either.
That's right.
I would argue to you that if you have a credit card with a balance on it for more than a month, you love money. And you are in danger of losing your soul for loving money. I don't mean going to hell. I don't know if you're in danger of hell, but you're in danger of losing your spiritual health because you love money. If you have a credit card, if you have a car payment, you love money. Now, you may not agree with that, and that's fine, but that's what I think. Why do I think that? Because you want things you can't afford, and so you sell your future for your pottage. You're like Esau. You're profane. You're selling your future for a bowl of pottage because you want it now. That is loving money. I don't care if you don't have 3 pennies to rub together. It makes no difference. So, why does someone like Bill Gates or Jeff Bezos or me, and I'm certainly not rich like them, but why do people who work the way these people work, why do they do that? Well, I can tell you why I do it. And I suspect that they do it for the same reasons and other people like that. And it's because we want to accomplish something. Mm-hmm. As much as I hate what I do, and I really despise what I do,
I know.
I hate it with all my, I have to put myself in a mindset every morning to go do that and do it with a good attitude because I can't stand what I do as a job. But I do it as best I possibly can. Mm-hmm. Because I want to be the best toilet paper installer.
Quit saying that. I hate it so much when you say that.
I want to be the best toilet paper installer in the entire state.
Because it's not true, people. It's not true. He does way more than that.
Well, I installed a lot of toilet papers this week in Houston. So, Albert's on your side. Albert says that Trump has a backbone. He says, imagine if Hillary was in office.
Yes, thank you, Albert.
Well, I kind of think we'd be in the same position right now with this whole issue on this.
Now stop. Now just stop. I don't love Trump, but I like him.
Well,
I like him.
Very good. I'm glad you do. I guess they took it away.
Okay.
Anyways, so when I'm saying that Christians are bad with money, I want you to understand, I am mainly talking about economics. I'm talking about money as a concept, not money. Even though many Christians are bad with their pocketbook, but they're bad with economics. They don't understand, and I'm not great. I'm not like an economic genius. I want to be clear on that. I haven't taken I have no formal training. I don't have a degree in economics.
No, but you have a very good understanding of it, I think, personally.
I've done a lot of research on it, and I've read a lot of books on it, and not just one-sided. See, don't just go read Milton Friedman, right? Because that's one-sided. That's the free market economic side of it. You need to read the Keynesian side. You need to read the more liberal or the more progressive worldview economists out there and get a balanced view, right? So you should probably read some Stephen King, and you should probably read some what's the guy's name from the New York Times. Now he's a columnist from the Times. Can't think of his name. Anyways, famous economist, Nobel-winning economist, but a very progressive side. He doesn't think that, for instance, he would say that minimum wage is good, not bad. Whereas the free market side, like Milton Friedman would say, minimum wage is horrible. Right. It's like the worst crime committed against the youth in human history by a government. Right. So you need to read both sides. You need to have a balance and look at it. But we need to be smarter when it comes to economics. Anyway, so that's what I think we should be afraid of. I think, and I'm hoping that not, but I suspect that Trump is going to fold. He is going to implement draconian FDR-style reforms to the economy. We are going to be driven into a Venezuela-style economy with price controls, with wage controls, with government intervention at all levels to save us. See, people think about this dystopian future where the government is Big Brother and controls everything. 1984, George Orwell, they have this picture of this. And they think we get there because the government, out of evilness, invades people's home with shock troops and tyrannizes them. That is not how it happens, ever. It always happens on the back of a crisis. And
it's usually like the way Thomas Sowell, and I wish I could quote it the way Thomas Sowell does, but you have to be very leery of a world leader who says they're doing it for your own good.
Absolutely. That's right. Anyone that does something for your good.
That really hit me. Like, it's for our own good. So every time they say that, we're all in this together. It's for your own good. We're trying to protect you. I'm like, I'm afraid of you now.
Don't protect me.
Just let me do it myself.
Just let me die. I'd rather die by myself.
I'll protect my own parents, okay? I'll take care of them.
Exactly. Exactly right. And so that is how it comes in. And it's not even that they're trying to be tyrants. See, it's not that people are like, they've always wanted the world order and they're trying to sneak it in like this. And maybe there's a few people that are of this. This is not the real problem. If it were that, we could fight against it. Mm-hmm. What it is they're going to come and say, hey, the economy's bad. We're 40% unemployment. You can't make your mortgage. You can't pay your rent. You can't afford to buy food. You're in a terrible condition. We're going to save you. And we're going to be hungry and starving. I'm not talking about little stuff like, your Netflix got cut off. We're going to save you. I'm talking about real problems. Real problems that I don't have a solution for. And they're going to come in and say, we're going to save you from that. And the way we're going to do it is we are going to stick it to the rich people. And you don't think that sells? That message?
To a percentage of the population, but not all. So this is where I think you're very doomsday.
Okay.
You tend to be a little bit doomsday.
Okay.
Now, I don't. All I can see is, yes, there is that. There are those people who would say, yes, be my savior, come save us all, stick it to the rich people, obviously. But Americans are very resilient. Americans love their freedom. Americans will not give up their freedom, not for anything. Even in terrible crises like, say, school shootings, there are parents out there whose children were lost to violence that way and still say, you have a right to own a gun, that our problems are elsewhere. We have other problems we need to deal with so that this doesn't happen to other families and other children.
How many Americans, if that's true, how many Americans are declining the federal government's protection of not paying rent? Because that's taking away their freedoms.
But how do you do that? That's just it, though. That's my fear, is then how do you go about standing up for your rights? Because their government obviously has an enormous amount of power during a crisis, an emergency crisis, right? It's like in the Constitution or whatever, they can do that. But there's that line. So obviously there's a point where we can fight that line, and I think that eventually Americans are going to say no. I just do. We're very innovative. There's a lot of people out there that can make their own way.
I don't know.
Here's the problem. I'm not completely sold that we're, doomsday already, Michael.
Okay. I understand that. And that I hope not. Look, I'm not advocating for that. But
I know you're not.
But I suspect it is. I am preparing myself for that's the way this is going to go. Because I think everyone who says we love our freedoms, they don't understand how it introduces. So when the government comes and says, we're going to cap your rent for a year, they won't be able to raise your rent or you won't even have to pay it for a year. Mm-hmm. We are going to put price controls on all necessary items, all food items. They will not be able to raise the price on anything. We are going to make it where they can't fire you for 2 years from your job. That doesn't look like they're taking away your freedoms.
No, it doesn't.
And so people embrace that.
Yeah.
What does that cause? That
But
causes
there's a lot of people out there that know that that is not right, that this is going to have terrible
51%.
effects. Maybe 51%.
I don't think so. I don't think so. I'm betting
You're
that
very
even
negative.
in my audience
So,
of
okay,
3 people, not even 51% of the 3 people that watch this show think that's wrong.
Well, it is wrong. It's terrible. You'll have terrible ramifications with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
And
because where does it all end?
Well, the problem
Where
is
you help
the
them,
problem
now
is the
help me.
ramifications. They cycle round and round.
Right.
That's what happened in the Great Depression.
Right.
They did these things. Everyone loved him. They voted FDR in 4 times. He won re-election 3 times on the back of those policies that extended the Great Depression and would have extended it for decades had it not been for World War II. World War II saved us, saved him. And now people think he's like the greatest.
Into a world power.
We were already a world power.
Not before D-Day.
Sure we were. Yeah, we did. Yeah, we
Oh,
were.
Okay.
But no one knew it.
Okay.
The leader of the Pearl Harbor bombing, the one who actually was not the general who planned it, but the one who actually flew the plane, one of the planes, and led it.
Japan obviously didn't know it because they never would have.
Well,
Right,
that's what I'm saying. So
yeah.
the leader of it was the Japanese man who was the leader of the actual attack force.
Mm-hmm.
He argued against it. He told his superiors that it was a terrible idea because he had lived in the U.S. and he had seen it, and he said, look, I was in the United States and I traveled on a weekend out in the country, and I got way out in the middle of nowhere. There was nobody around, and I got up on a mountain, and there were 2 men that were leveling off the top of that mountain and turning it into a flat, level ground. 2 men were doing it in one day because of the machinery that they had. He said, in Japan, we would have had thousands of men up there with shovels. He says, you cannot beat these people. They will destroy you.
Okay.
No, we were a world power. We just weren't one that flexed. We were isolationists.
Yes.
So we didn't have
That's what it was.
large standing military.
Right.
And we didn't have a global presence. A lot of things that we now take for granted did not exist.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying that it wasn't very hard to then make up. I mean, to make inroads and get people over there and open up bases, and all of that was very hard. But we did it incredibly fast. Churchill knew it. Churchill was trying to get the U.S. into the war from the very beginning.
Before.
Right. And he, in his famous speech, which you can hear it on that last movie that came out in Our Darkest Hour, the last speech he gives, that's his famous speech. And his point in his speech is, all Britain has to do is hold out until the new world, with all its might and all its power, comes to our aid. He knew the economic resources, the human resources that we had to do it. So there were a lot of people that knew the U.S. was the world power.
Mm-hmm.
We just weren't living like that or acting like it.
Right.
Which a lot of people want to go back to that time and be isolationists.
Okay, so you're talking about what I should be afraid of. And at the same time, we should not live in fear. So tell us.
Well, that's why I
so
said it's not
you need
afraid.
I know, but now you might have made a few people a little bit afraid. And I don't think we should end the podcast that way. I think there is hope.
But I love to end it that way.
No. Not while I'm here. And I'm your guest.
Not while I'm sheriff.
So do your darndest to console.
Well, what do you want me to tell people?
I don't know, Michael, but it's a little bit doomsday, and so like you said, we're not of this world. This is not where we hold out our hope. Our hope is not in this world.
Well, let's go back to this for one moment, because I don't think I answered this as well as I would like, or as completely as I would like, because I know that this is a concern that many Christians have when it comes to money, and they're trying to balance not loving money, because you kind of asked me about that, and we didn't really get to it. But they're trying to balance not loving money with being with money and living in the world. Mm-hmm. We live in the world, and we have to have money, and we have to use it.
Yes.
And the idea that Christians should do it poorly as a sign of not loving money is counterproductive. It is actually overemphasizing money. We should handle money the very best we possibly can. We should understand it better than anyone else. We should handle it better than anyone else because a Christian who handles money poorly, this is my opinion. So a Christian who handles money poorly is giving evidence that they love money and they don't love the world to come.
Yeah.
I think it's actually the opposite way around.
Yeah.
Right? Because if a Christian loves the kingdom to come and is living for the kingdom to come, it should translate into them doing their best in the time now. Understanding the kingdom of Christ is understanding that it's not like, well, this world is a throwaway world. See, this is the new atheist argument against Christianity. Their argument against Christianity and religion in whole, but let's just talk about Christianity. Their argument against religion and Christianity is that because we look for heaven, then we hate the world. And we were willing to do anything stupid, unethical, immoral, or wrong in their eyes with the world that is, not live our life to the fullest now because we hate our life now. We despise it, right?
Well, that's just not true.
Well, it is true.
For who?
For a lot of people.
In what way?
Well, for instance, not handling money properly because they have their eyes on heaven. We live for heaven, therefore we're irresponsible with money. Now, when I'm saying irresponsible, I'm not just saying you go out and buy things you can't afford, even though if you have credit, that's exactly what you're doing. If you have a car payment, that's exactly what you did. You went and bought something you couldn't afford, right? So you're irresponsible that way. But even if you're not doing that, if you are not maximizing your productivity at work because you're a Christian and this world is beneath you, then you're doing exactly what the new atheists are blaming Christians of doing. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
And Christians should not do that.
Okay.
The kingdom, as Christ preached the kingdom, is not about making this world a throwaway, disposable, insignificant world.
Yeah.
Understanding the kingdom is understanding that what we do here translates to there.
Right.
How we handle money here. Not every.
That's why he judges us by the way we lived our life, right? It's very
And not
obvious.
just, yes, exactly. Every judgment in the Bible is based on our works. I know many Christians may not be aware of that.
Well, that's the whole wood, hay, and stubble, what burns and what stays.
Exactly. Every single judgment in the Bible is based on our works on this earth. And a great number of the parables of Jesus deal with money and how you handle money.
Yeah.
And we like to spiritualize those. And I have heard these parables preached my whole life, and very seldomly, if any times, have I heard somebody other than me say, hey, this parable is actually talking about money. It's always spiritualized, and it's always turned into the ever after, the sweet by and by, it's be here, but it's spiritual work. The talents are the work you do for Christ on earth. It's preaching, it's teaching, it's singing in the church. It's all the spiritual things, which you can interpret it that way. You can apply it that way. But it doesn't say that. It's actual money. So to say that that it is not to be taken in its at face value, at least at some point, and say we have to handle money properly, because Christ in his parables commands us to not be stupid like Christians tend to be, but to be wise like people of this world tend to be wise, but ethically and morally and spiritually on top of that. Right? The people of this world are wise in this world, but unethically, immorally, and unspiritually. Yeah. Christians, we are commanded to do the heavy lifting of being both wise in this world with the things of this world, but also ethically, morally, and spiritually, right? And so that's the message of the kingdom. When new atheists hear Christians talk about how this world is disposable, it doesn't really matter, we're just a big practice run, what matters is when we get to heaven, and they criticize that, they're right. They're absolutely right. And they're right to say that view of Christianity will take Christians to doing horrible, unethical, immoral things on earth. They are absolutely right in that. That is an absolutely valid criticism, and that is what happens. And Christians need a break from that mold. They need to realize that how we handle, let's say, money, economics, all of these things, our health, right? Not eating ourselves into obesity, all these things. How we handle these things are all matter in the kingdom. They all matter. Why should a Christian be brilliant with money? Because it matters to Christ. Doing what I do at work does not matter to me. It takes everything I have all day, every day, to do it like it matters. Because I look at this, and these stupid general contractor superintendents are wringing their hands over these things. Oh, where are we going to put this? And they're inch here, inch there. And I'm thinking, it's a stupid toilet paper holder. It isn't worth crap. Literally. Who cares? It's just dumb. And it takes everything in me to not think that way. And the only way I don't think that way is I think, okay, for whatever reason that I do not comprehend, and I may never comprehend, I don't know if there's enough wisdom in heaven to make this comprehensible to me. For whatever reason, Jesus cares about what I do with this stupid toilet paper holder. And so I'm going to do it the very best I can. And Jesus cares that I maximize my productivity and my efficiency. And how is that measured on earth? It's measured in money. How do I know if I have maximized my productivity? Because I make more money. That's how I know. Paul says that anyone who didn't used to work needs to go get a job and work so that they can have money so that they can give.
So you can give.
Which is where you said, going back to what you had said. We work to have, to give.
Right.
So if you are not taking money seriously and you think, well, it's because I don't love money. No, it's because you don't love giving. It's because you don't love giving. If you loved giving like you pretend to love giving, you would be making more money so you could give more.
Right.
Right?
Right.
If you're not working more to make more, to give more, then you're on the other end of that stick. You're working less to take more. You can't give unless you have.
Yes, I agree with that 100%.
Then we have found a point of agreement.
Yeah.
It's a miracle.
Yeah.
Now,
Well, we agree on all the important
Mazda
We do agree on
West
everything.
says that that Terri is great. She compliments you perfectly. I think you need her on every podcast.
that is what I have been saying. Believe it or not, I work.
Thank you.
Believe it or not, I try very hard to convince her to come on, and she never wants to. And I tell her that she is great. She's great on camera.
Yes.
She says, "Hearken to your wife, Michael."
Hearken to your wife. I love it.
Brett Carpenter says, at least Michael installs the toilet paper holder, so I install the rolls. He says, and I'm the best toilet paper roll installer ever.
Okay, so I have a question. So when I go into the bathroom and we run out of toilet paper and you set the roll of toilet paper on top of the holder, I'm thinking...
I install holders, not toilet paper.
He's an installer by trade. And he can't put the roll of toilet paper on the holder.
Well, I think that's what Brett's trying to say. I think he's saying
Right,
you should just call
okay,
him, and
yeah.
he'll come down and
Oh,
do
well,
it for
very
you.
good.
They have a saying in Spanish that en casa de herrero mucha madera hay.
That's right. Well,
In the welder's house, everything's
Yes.
made of wood.
yes.
That's
Look
the-
at my son's hair over there, and I'm a hairstylist.
What are you talking about? Your hair looks great. Best it's ever looked.
So, okay.
Well, yeah.
I'm gonna give you my best shot at consolation. We are all gonna die. Look,
I know it's hard.
No.
I know it's hard.
here's the deal, and this is a human problem. We all suffer from this. We're at the 1 yard line. We're at the last hour, all the cliches, all the ways you can say it. We're at the last minute, we're saying, okay, how do we fix this so we don't devolve into chaos? And it's the simple answer is it's too late. We have gone 50 years, for sure 30 years, without teaching economics in our schools, in our churches,
Right.
in our homes. So the average person knows nothing about economics.
You're off to a great start, babe.
Thank you. This is my specialty. So
I-
just stand back,
okay.
stand
I
back,
am waiting
and
for the
and
good
and
stuff.
watch me do my thing.
Oh no, here we go. All right.
And so we've gone 30 years without teaching this. Our kids don't understand economics. Our politicians don't understand economics. Our school teachers don't understand it. Nobody does. So nobody's going to be thinking that way. Now, in 1978, we were in a very similar situation. We had gotten through the summer of love and all the flower power and all that stuff, and nobody knew economics either. It had gone postmodernist and everything had gone ridiculous. Milton Friedman comes out and he writes Free to Choose.
Okay. Back in the 70s.
79, I believe, is when it's published.
Okay.
Free to Choose. And he does a series of television shows on the book. That book becomes the best-selling book of the year and gets Ronald Reagan elected. That's the reason Ronald Reagan gets elected in 1980, because of this book, Free to Choose.
Okay.
Because people became immediately exposed to free market, classical liberal economic thought and changed the way they saw everything. Because it changes the way you see everything. When I tell you you need to be smart with money, this won't just change your finances. That'll be the smallest impact that actually has. You Christians that are up in arms that I'm talking about money, you don't understand. This is why Christ centered his parables on money. If you could understand money right, it would change everything. Because to understand money right, you have to change the way you think.
Yeah.
And the reason why money is used in the parables of Christ as the keystone of this argument or of this debate is because it's something we can easily comprehend. But the moment you comprehend it, you have changed your way of thinking. And it'll change your way of thinking about everything. Trust me, I know.
It really does. Yeah.
It completely, radically changes your worldview when you understand money right. So Milton Friedman writes the book. The book changes the way many, many people think about money. And it changed the whole course of our nation. And what looked like impossible to happen. Ronald Reagan being elected was like impossible to happen. He was the Trump of his day. That nobody ever thought that could happen.
Right.
It was ridiculous to even think about it, and yet he does. And it changes the course of our nation. We have got to get back to these first principles. I don't know if it's too late or not, but we have to assume it isn't, because assuming it is means we do nothing, right? If we assume it's too late, then we'll do absolutely nothing. We have to, look, you have your kids at home. Those of you that have your kids at home and you're homeschooling them, I would not be teaching them math if I were you. I would not be worrying about English and well, maybe English, but I would not be worrying about all the different subjects that they're falling behind on. Trust me, they're overrated. I didn't even graduate high school, and I work every day with college-educated people, right? And they all are stupid. So education, formal education is highly overrated. You have your kids at home. If I had my kids at home right now, I would be teaching them English right, correctly.
Right.
I would be teaching them economics, seriously teaching them economics. And I would be teaching them philosophy or logic. Those are the things I would be teaching them. And I would throw all the books that school gave them and trying to get them to do in the garbage. They're going to pass them anyways. Nobody's flunking. You want to know a ramification of all this? A little off topic here, but I've been thinking about this. When in 20 years, no, not in 20 years, in 10 years, let's say in 10 years, there's going to be doctors who make less money than other doctors. Anyone who graduated in this year, you're not going to want them to be your doctor.
No, probably not.
No, because they just passed them.
The course on brain surgery?
You're
That's
like,
all right.
you're going to go to your doctor and say, where were you in 2020? And if he says, well, that was the year I did my surgical residency. Pass. I pass.
Next.
Exactly right.
Okay.
This is what we need to do. Look, I have 3 people who listen to this show. There's almost nothing I can do about any of this except try to inform those 3 people. You have 2 or 3 little people that live in your house,
Right.
your children, your wife, your husband. You can inform them. You can't inform them on the details of what's going on because nobody knows what those are. But we have to understand the economic principles that are going to be behind whatever type of recovery they try to implement. Because if not, they're going to sneak that in. Now, I say sneak it in, that's really charged language. They think they're doing you well. They think they're helping. But they're going to be killing us all. We have to be aware of that. And the only way we're going to be aware of that is if we actually do it. So I'm going to give you some reading material. You should read Free to Choose by Milton Friedman. You should read Basic Economics. This is a great book to teach your kids economics with. Thomas Sowell wrote a really, really good book. Thomas Sowell, it's called Basic Economics. You can get it on Kindle, and it's a fantastic book. Any book written by Thomas Sowell is good. This is his magnum opus, Basic Economics. That's a great book on that subject. Those are 2 good books on economics where you can start off on. On finances, I would encourage you, if you haven't already done so, to read Dave Ramsey's book. What's the name of it?
Total Makeover.
Yeah.
Money
Your
Makeover,
total money
Makeover.
Your Total Money Makeover, I think, is the name of it now. It changed titles. It used to be called something else. But anyways, go on to Dave Ramsey's site and you can get his book. And I would encourage you to do that on finances. And you can start there. And there's some other good books. I'll probably put some in the show notes and the description of these videos and the podcast, and there's some other books that slip my mind at the moment. And you need to inform yourself on this stuff so that you know how to vote and you know how to opine. And wherever you have a sphere of influence, you need to have information, not that you have memorized, because that doesn't work. It has to actually be integrated into your very being. It has to be how you think. It's why we call it a worldview. You need to have a proper economic, financial, spiritual, Christian worldview, not a modern Christian worldview that is a dichotomy of the few that think that the world is trash and we shouldn't bother with it, and the other large portion of Christians who are worldly Christians who care nothing about the kingdom. This is a horrible dichotomy we find in Christianity today. We need to not be part of that dichotomy.
Right.
We need the Christians who live in this world, who use this world, but don't abuse this world, like Paul said.
Right.
We need to be the Christians who will live for the kingdom and know that the best way to do that, and the only way to live for the kingdom, is to be the proper, brilliant, intelligent, successful, efficient, productive stewards in this world today. That we honor Christ by not being stupid with money. We need to be those Christians, and if we're living that way, then we will have an inordinate influence on everyone around us, the way the Jews have throughout history.
That's true.
So if you look at the Jews and the way they've lived their life, especially historically, they have had an inordinate influence on the world without preaching to them. Now, I'm not against preaching, but without even... the Jews are against proselytizing. They don't proselytize, and yet they have had an enormous impact on the world because they lived their lives.
Now, when you say
so.
success, that doesn't necessarily translate into riches.
It does.
What would you define as riches?
A lot of money in the bank. It does on a general way. So let me make this clear.
Yeah, you need to make it clear.
In a corrupt society, if you're rich, it's because you're corrupt. And that is a shame, and it's against Christianity. But in an honest society, if you are poor, it is because you are corrupt. You are not using your God-given talents and gifts.
Okay, but there are a lot of people that have way more money than we do.
No, this is not a comparative point.
Okay.
So this is the problem with our modern view of wealth and riches.
Yeah.
Right? People say I'm poor. People in America say they're poor. Nobody in America is really poor.
Not yet.
Or everybody in America is poor, depending on how you look at it. And I could make the argument on both ways, that everybody in America is poor or nobody in America is poor, right? But poverty and riches is not a relative judgment. I'm not rich or poor because my neighbor has more or less. I'm rich or poor because I provide for myself above my necessities. That makes me rich. I am rich, and I would go even further than that. I am rich because I provide for myself above my necessities to the maximum of my abilities.
Right.
So if I am purposefully dragging my feet, right? Because I know a lot of people where I work in construction
Yeah.
who work, you ask them, they'll only work 4 days a week. And if you say, why do you only work 4 days a week? Their answer is, because I'll starve to death on 3. They work the least amount of time they can. Their goal is to maximize rest, maximize fun, maximize quote unquote family time, and minimize work. That's their goal in life. How to work less. Whenever any of them hear that I have my own business, their answer, their retort is always the same. Oh, great. Work less, make more. That's what they think of private
tell them
business.
to come talk to me.
Yes. Tell them to talk to anybody who has their own business. If you want to work less and make more, do not own your own business. If you own your own business, there's only one option. Work more and hopefully make more. That's the only real option there is. There is no work more, work less, make more. That doesn't exist.
Well, owning your own business, that's a very small, it's very,
Yes, and I don't think
very
that everyone
hard.
has to
a
own
lot
their
of
own
marriages
business.
probably can't even, take that because
Absolutely.
you spend so much time apart, kids. It's not an easy task.
Yes.
Well, I don't know about that. I'm pretty sure Dad would have loved for all of us just to go to work with him. I mean, he forced us to.
I wanted family time.
Yeah,
I was all for family time.
Let's go on vacation.
Hey,
I set up
some
a
people
job
want
outside.
vacations, other people want staycations. I am
I
for
know.
paycations.
I know.
Paycations. What's a paycation? You go to work and they pay you to be there. Paycation. Every one of you need to maximize your paycations
Yeah.
and minimize
Yeah.
your vacations. The only difference between going to work and going on vacation is that when you go to work, they pay you to do it. And when you go on vacation, you pay to do it. It's the only difference.
But what is it? You always get upset with me when you're home a little early. Shouldn't you still
Yeah.
be at work?
Yeah, she's always like, she says, oh, I hate that you work so much. So then I come home early one day and then she's like, why are you home so early? I always see, it's like I walk in and her face is glowing and she's smiling. And as soon as she sees me walk through the door, her whole countenance falls. And it's like her life has ended. I'm joking.
Not true.
Not true at all. That's true. It's
But
not
you
true.
should be at work.
I should be at work. See, that's why I work the way I do. I have a wife who drives me. Yeah. Anyways,
I have no problem with that.
but this is how Christians should be living. This is how we should be thinking. That's my best stab at consolation. Okay. Liz Thompson says, all college educated are stupid, useless. No, I said all the ones I work with. All the ones I work with. And if you don't agree with me, I'm sure right now you're not working and you're welcome to come carry toilet partition panels up the stairs and meet them.
You need a job?
And you will find out that they are. This is why she says this. Having attended college, so you took it personally. And hold multiple degrees, I can attest you learn a lot more in college than just the subjects taught. You learn a lot more digging ditches than just the subject taught. That's my point. My point is that colleges are corrupt now. Now, I am not against university in theory.
No.
I think that if university would go back to what it was supposed to be, then I would want everyone qualified to go get a degree. Not everyone is qualified to do so. The fact that almost anyone can go get a degree proves to me those degrees, economically speaking, and if you studied economics, you would know this, okay? Economically speaking, if everyone can have something, it isn't worth anything. Mm-hmm. The only thing that makes something worth something economically is if not everyone can have it. So if everyone can go get a degree and there's no barrier of entry, and there isn't. I mean, you can actually not even qualify on an IQ test and get in, right? You can just go. You can get a degree. Mm-hmm. It means it's not worth much. And I want colleges to go back to a time when getting a college degree was very, very hard. And only a few people, only a small percentage of people in the country had the intellectual capacity to do so.
And go
That's what
back
it
to
ought to be.
on-the-job training.
Yes, exactly right. Most of what is taught in college. So the reason why college-educated people are now running the job sites is because one of the easiest degrees to get now in college, the cheapest and easiest degree, one of them, is construction management. Construction management. Let me explain to you Liz Thompson. And we're going to have her on the podcast
Yes,
here in the
that's
future.
gonna be
So I'm going
fun.
to get a real good chance to talk about this. We're going to deal with this. But let me give you a little taste of your medicine.
Don't listen. Plug your ears.
So let me explain to you what your college ilk is like on the job sites that I work on. I was there yesterday in Houston, and we had to install these toilet partitions. Okay, the toilet partitions. The architect, who is college educated, designed them illegally. It's not like they're weird. They're in every building.
Okay.
He designed them illegally. The people who make the material probably are college educated, and they built them illegally.
What do you mean by illegally?
So they don't pass.
Okay.
There are laws,
Right.
federal and state laws, that are like extremely enforced.
Strict.
Right.
Yes.
Very
Cannot open
strict.
the building
You cannot
without
open
them
the
being
building
passed.
until it's right.
Right.
They won't let
I
you
knew
open the
that.
building.
Mhm.
So they're illegal.
Okay.
Designed by college graduates, built by college graduates. The people that are there, the superintendents, they all wear a college ring, which, if your college degree taught you so little that you got to wear the ring so everyone knows you got that education, makes me wonder just how good it is. Anyways, so they're all in there thumping their college rings on the countertops, right, talking to me. And their solution is
Okay.
to
They must hate
install
talking
it.
to you.
They do. Their solution is to install it illegally. That's their solution. All the college graduates there, and what they come up with, let's install it illegally. See what happens.
And it's not going to pass.
No, it'll never pass. They don't even. Yeah. Anyways, that's not even the best example. We could have a whole 4-hour podcast on all the stupid things that college graduates do on the construction site. Now,
And yet we have encouraged our children to go to college and our
but
daughter to go
only
to
I've
college.
only encouraged them to go to college if they're going to do something you can only do with a college degree,
Right.
which means STEM fields. So engineering. See,
Yeah,
if
sciences.
those people had an engineering degree, not an architectural degree, there's a huge difference.
Yeah.
An engineering degree,
Right.
they would have been thinking differently, most likely. So engineering degrees, what's it called? Science, technology, engineering, medicine.
Right.
These are the things. Law. These are things you have to go get a college degree for, and you actually study these things. I think that's good. Business management, construction management, those are right up there with women's studies and basket weaving. These are useless degrees. You can get that. You can get that job without doing that. Let's see what she says.
On an annual basis, degree holders earn $32,000 more than not. I think that demonstrates it's worth it.
You better look at your numbers and get them brushed up, because I've actually done a tremendous amount of study, not just Googled it at the moment. So maybe you better brush up. We'll talk about this when you come into the podcast. But I would encourage you to not be like some of my past guests and not be truly prepared. But we'll have a conversation on that when you come in. So, so there are college degrees that are absolutely worth it. And I would encourage anyone with the ability. Not everyone can be an engineer. That's very hard. I couldn't be an engineer. I don't have the intellectual capacity for it, I don't think. I don't think I have the capacity maybe to be a doctor or other things. I don't know that I do. In fact, I think I don't. I certainly don't anymore. Even when I was young, maybe. I don't know. But I would probably guess no. And so what do you do if you can't do a STEM field? Well, I would tell you that you need to go into the trades. And by trades, I don't just mean construction trades, but there's all forms of them. There's all types of computer stuff. There's all kinds of electronic things, digital things you can get into, construction you can get into. There's a lot of areas you can get into where you get paid to be trained. For instance, let's just use electricians for an example. So if you want to be an electrician, you go work for an electrical company. They will put you to work, and they're probably going to pay you $17 an hour starting out if you're working in Austin, because that's the minimum you're allowed to be paid many times. So
Yeah.
15 to 17 an hour starting out. And they're going to pay for your school that you take on Saturdays, which is like a 4-year degree in electricity, in the electrical field. And so they're going to pay for the school, and you're going to go every Saturday and do that. So you're working for 15 to 17 an hour. They're paying for your school. When you graduate, they're going to hire you on at $30 an hour, and then they're going to continue to pay for you to further your education. You can get a master's degree in electricity, a master's, and never pay a penny. In fact, they will have paid you. And electricians make more than the average college graduate. In fact, if you read the book called The Millionaire Next Door, you'll find out that a large portion of the millionaires in America are electricians. Well, we'll get to that when she comes in. Anyway.
We'll probably end with this question here.
Okay.
It's, how are you preparing for the ramifications of this issue? I mean, your advice for us now.
So, personally, I would tell you, don't borrow money. Stay out of debt as much as you possibly can. Save all the money you can save. Work every hour you can work. Look, if at your job, if you've been a good Christian, then you're the best worker they have. Now, if you're not the best worker they have, then that tells you what I think about your Christianity. But if you've been a good Christian, that means you're the best worker on your job. That means that when everyone else gets laid off, they keep you. And when they need someone to work overtime, you're the one that they're wanting to do it, because they know that you will not milk the clock. You're not going to drag your feet. You're going to be more productive as the day draws on, not less productive. And so you're going to get all the overtime you can possibly get, hopefully. And you should take all of it. You should be working 50, 60, 70, 80 hours a week, whatever you can get if you still are working right now. And you should be making every penny you can possibly make. And don't go spending the money. Save the money. Save the money until we see what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. This is why I told everyone in our church that they should quit giving offerings except what the bare minimum that their conscience demanded. The bare minimum that their conscience demanded. Now, for some people, they think they got to continue to give the same amount to missions. I personally don't see it that way. That's a whole nother discussion, but I don't see it that way. I think that they should essentially stop giving to missions, except for the bare minimum their conscience demands, and put that money aside. Now, what I suggested that they do is that they put that money in the savings. When this is all over, if it all blows over and I'm a doomsdayer and nothing of this happens, then you can dump all that money back in the offering box and give it. But I believe we have a responsibility, every one of us, you, me, every missionary, every pastor, to provide for our own first. Okay? So I think you should be saving your money everywhere you can. I especially told the people in our church, and I'm telling you all again, I appreciate all of you who have over the years given me offerings. I appreciate it. I'm very grateful for it. Do not give me offerings. Don't do it. Keep your money. Okay? Now, if you insist to do it, I will take it, and I'll be very grateful for it. But don't do it. Keep your money. Put that money, whatever money you would normally give me as an offering, or you would put in the general fund, or you would put in the building. Don't give to our building fund. Don't do that. It is very unlikely we are going to build a building now. I don't see that happening. Don't put money in the building fund. We don't need money in the general fund. Only thing we have in the general fund to pay for is our insurance on our monthly liability insurance, which I can pay myself. So you don't need to hardly be giving anything to our church. Now, if your conscience says that you need to give, I would encourage you to find someone who's in need and give to them directly. Now, if you think that it's the missionaries, I think that's a good idea. Then give the bare minimum your conscience demands. That might be 10%, it might be 5%, maybe it's 2%. I don't know where you see. So I think every Christian ought to have a minimum that they think they should be giving. And I think we should give. I'm not saying don't give at all. That's a mistake. You should give, but you should be given the minimum, right, of what your conscience demands. For some people, that might be a tithe. Okay, then give your tithe. And you might say, I'm going to give it to those that need it. Then I would encourage you to look at the missionaries, right, that are on the field, to look at people in need around your neighborhood, around your community, maybe people you work with. I don't know. You need to look and see, but we need to be giving, I think, in response to what's going on. I don't think we need to be plowing ahead, pretending like nothing's going to happen, like there's going to be no after effects, no ramifications to this. We need to think completely differently. If not, Christians are going to be starving when this comes to the end. One of the things that has historically defined Christianity is that Christians have done well in crises because they typically have a very low view of debt. They see debt as being bad. So Christians historically have been debt-free and have had a high view of saving, a high view of helping, a high view of giving, a high view of being in a position economically to do so. And they don't live for the world. And so they're not spending all their money frivolously. That's historical. Now, I think that my generation, and particularly your generation, Nolan, have lost that a lot. So who knows what's going to happen with this generation of Christians. But if we'll get back to that, and like we've been saying at Freeborn Church for a long time, if we'll get back to that, then Christians will be in a position to be very helpful in this time. That's why hospitals, soup kitchens, rescue homes, all of these things cropped up, not from secular environment. It wasn't secularists who did this. Christians did it. It wasn't just because they had a big heart to help people. It's because they were financially in the position to do so. And that's why they did it. Right. And so that's what we need to be doing. We need to be minimizing our giving, minimizing our expenses, minimizing our expenditures, minimizing our debt. We should be, now, if you're in debt, don't be making maximum payments. Don't try to get out of debt right now. That's not a good idea. Pay your minimum payments and wait and wait this out because you might need the money. And if it comes between feeding your family or paying off Best Buy for that big screen TV you should not have bought, then tell Best Buy, tough luck, go talk to the government in bankruptcy court, I'm feeding my family. So you need to hold on to all the money you can possibly hold on to. That's what you need to be doing right now.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right. Well, I appreciate everyone that listened to us and that spoke to us on the live chat. We're glad to have you. I hope you know I'm not trying to offend anybody. I know I say things that come across very offensive and very mean. I really love every single one of you three that listen to me. All three of you. I love every one of you. And it's not my intention to offend anybody. I don't think I'm better than anybody. Look, I'm the stupid that was $60,000 in debt with nothing to show for it. I'm the biggest idiot you've ever seen. Okay? Many of you have much more education than I do. You're more intelligent than me. I know that. I know it doesn't come across that way when I speak, and I'm sorry. That's one of my many, many character flaws that my wife has been working tirelessly on to beat out of me. No, Mama, don't beat me. To beat out of me over the last 28 years. So please don't take it personally. It's not personal. I don't mean to be offensive. I'm just a terrible person. That's just the way it is.
Well, I'll have work to do.
Well, Terri Jackson, thank you for being with us today,
I
above
know.
all. I hope to get you back on again. You made
right.
Magda happy, so that was
that
was
one
good.
person.
That one person,
All
you're
right.
one fan. You have a fan club.
Yeah.
Magda, write her a fan letter, so she'll come
Michael,
back again. Terri, you're the
No.
best.
No.
They want you to take over the podcast because if you were doing the podcast, okay, let's end on this.
No.
Let's end on this. You said I didn't do a good job of consolation, so there's your camera. There's your fans.
No, I cannot do that.
You can't? Give them a consolation. Surely you can. Something consoling. Do you have any message of consolation for the people, for the masses?
All I know is what I do for myself.
Okay,
So
let's talk about
I
that.
have you that I live with.
She's been in pandemic for 28 years.
Yes. No. Yeah. So, well, honestly, one of the things that you've always told me is not to worry about anything that has not happened yet. that we're smart and that we prepare, but we don't worry about what has not happened yet. So, and there's a part of me that kind of comes naturally too. I'm not naturally a fear mongering. I'm not, I'm not overcome with fear very easily. So, what I know is that we're not here. We're not here for this world, and there are bigger forces around us. And the government, although it seems like they can just snap their fingers and then we are at their mercy, we're not at their mercy because we belong to Christ, and Christ is obviously in control. And what happens is going to happen, and there's nothing that we can necessarily do about it. I don't know. I'm just not going to worry about that right now. I'm just not going to. I'm not going to go out and I'm not going to start preparing for doomsday. We're not going to build a basement, and fill it with food and all that. We're just not going to do that. And I'm okay with that. I don't think that we have to. I think that we're going to be okay. I know we are.
So here's one thing that'll be very different from this and the Depression, I think. And that is, in the Depression, there was the average farmer could only produce enough food, I think, for 7 people. I think that's what the number is. I have to go back and check it.
You had mentioned that in one of your podcasts.
Yeah,
before
they could only
food.
produce enough food for 7 people.
Mm-hmm.
And nowadays, a single farmer can produce enough food for thousands.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the actual number. The number is much lower, the official number. But that's not taking into account all the subsidies for not farming and all the government restrictions.
Yeah.
If nobody's going to starve in America.
Right.
It's just not going to happen.
Right.
Our technology, it could if we had monumental plagues that wiped out the entire farmland.
Mm-hmm.
Then we would all starve to death, right? Something like that.
Of course.
Which would be apocalyptic, and we're probably in the end times then if that happens. If you start seeing that, then that means, 33% of the world is going to die.
Mm-hmm.
That's just, then we're there. We're in the apocalypse.
Mm-hmm.
But if we're not in the apocalypse, then the chances that we can't get food are like zero, and are practically zero. Because this country, and not just this country, but the world now, and the technological advance we have, has it where very few people can feed the entire world many times over. Many, many times over. And so, the access to food is not going to, so it's not like we're all going to start literally starving to death. But the world as we know it and life as we know it, I think, is probably over. And that's happened many times before.
Yeah.
If you go back and read the fall of Rome, the fall of Constantinople, if you look at the different changes, massive changes like that, had huge effects on Christians. When Constantinople fell, that was a huge, huge thing that affected Christianity dramatically, right? Islam took over what was Christianity. The 7 churches are in Turkey. That's where they're at. What is now Turkey, there is no church in Turkey now to speak of. So there's going to be dramatic changes coming.
Well, and we're not promised, an easy life. And, and I made a decision years ago, mainly when I first got this house and, finally got what my dream house was. And I made a decision that I was not going to be defined by this, that this is not who I am. Mm-hmm. Because this is not, I love it, yes, and I will enjoy every second that I have living on this beautiful property and in the house, and with the job that has allowed you and has allowed us many, many, many privileges, and our kids are doing well and all that. But it's not what defines me. This house and our job and what we do, it's not who I am. If it's all taken away, I'm still your wife, I'm still a mother, I am still, what really matters cannot be taken from me.
That's right.
And so I told you from the beginning, if you don't want to do this job anymore, we'll sell everything we have and we'll just move. And I mean that to this day.
I know you do.
Because this is not everything.
Yeah.
It's people, and it's who I am as a child of God. And sometimes, we're going to go through things, and it's how I deal with it that matters.
Yeah.
It's how the testimony that I give to my kids, the testimony that I give to the brethren, that I give to you, and staying strong, and then just pushing through and living with it.
Yeah. And the reason I continue to do a job I don't really like isn't because I want to own this house.
No, I know.
That the reason I do that is because it is the most efficient way for me to come up with the amount of money I need to do the ministry. Efficient in every way.
Yeah.
It doesn't tax my brain.
Right.
So I love computer programming.
Yeah.
And if I could make as much money computer programming as I do this, I probably would not do it because I love it too much.
Yeah.
And I get lost in that world.
And I already don't see you that much, so I can only imagine.
The problem is when I'm computer programming, even when I'm not programming, I'm programming.
Oh, you're in your head.
Yeah.
You're in your head 24/7.
I live in the world 24 hours a day, all day, every day. And I can do that. And if I wasn't married, I would probably do that.
I know you don't like what you do, but I am very thankful you do what you do.
Yeah. And I'm thankful for God that I have it. So I'm not bitter or resentful, and I don't want to come across as being ungrateful. Because I'm not. I'm very grateful. It's an amazing opportunity I have that I can use like 0.001% of my brain capacity, because a monkey could practically do what I do.
I like how you keep saying that. You know, we do the same thing. You basically say
Like I said, a monkey can do what I do.
I know, everybody gets
I
mad
have
when
the
you
same
say
job
that.
you have.
Like I said, a monkey can do it.
That's not true.
That's not
Stop
true.
saying that.
No, I mean, it doesn't, you know it. It takes very little
No,
brain power
not
to do it. It just does. I mean, there's things you need to know and you got to learn it, and it's hard to learn. But once you learn it, it's just construction. It's repetitious, and you're doing the same thing, and you follow the same rules, and you don't have to think about it. It's not brain surgery at all.
No.
It's not even architecture, right? It's not business management. It's not even construction management. It's like screwing a toilet paper holder to the wall. And, you know, I mean, that's essentially the bulk of what we do.
Right.
And so, so I get to use very little of my brain, which means I have a lot of time to think about other things. And when I come home, I don't think about it, which is a huge thing.
Yeah.
And so then I can prepare sermons, and I can do things like that, and I can work on the church and work on this stuff. If I was programming, I would not be doing a podcast,
Yeah.
because I'd be sitting here
Yeah.
and code is going through my
Yeah.
eyes. That's
Yeah.
all I see.
Right.
And I'm just like, it's like being on a drug. You've lived with me like
Yeah,
that. And it's
yes.
like imagine somebody who's tripping on acid or whatever drug it is that makes you this way
Yeah.
24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and it never ends.
Yeah.
For years. I could do it
Right.
for years.
I
I
know.
would sit there and program until the monitor started levitating. The computer monitor would start going up in the air and dancing. And then I would know that it's time to go to get some sleep, because I'm hallucinating. That's how long I'd sit there and program.
Yeah. I
You didn't know that,
I
did you?
remember those
Oh,
days.
you do?
Oh, yes, they're burned in my memory.
Yeah. So, all right.
Very good.
Well, thank
I got
you
a
for being with
birthday
us.
cake to make for
Yes, you
Chris's
do.
birthday.
All right. Thank you for being with us. Good to have everybody. See you next Saturday.